Seven Sport now takes you to Melbourne International Raceway, the home of the Australian Grand Prix, for this exclusive telecast of the Hughes Guardrail Australian GT Championship Day.
Good afternoon and welcome to our Seven Network coverage of motor racing from Calder in Melbourne. Although Calder or colder, I'm not sure, Evan Green.
Colder and windier, I think. In fact, the cold weather, Gary, could be influential today, particularly for the single-seaters. There is a major Formula One race, and cold tyres could make those early corners very interesting. Other big races here today are the second last round of the Alfa Trophy. In an earlier heat this morning, we saw young Joe Beninka, the young Melbourne amateur, win from such hardened veterans as Colin Bond and Dick Johnson. So the final this afternoon will be a big scrap. But the major race will be the GTs. And in practice yesterday, some of the big fellas, particularly the Porsches, had a lot of troubles.
I think we'll cross over now to the garage area and find out about that from Chris DeFrago.
Thank you, Gary. There was a problem yesterday with two Porsches. The 935, which is on the front row of the grid, driven by Rusty French, had a problem with the rev limiter of the engine, creating a vibration through the engine, undoing the camshaft nut, which broke some of the valves. It was a very expensive and very lengthy engine rebuild overnight, but they'll be back on the front row. And the second row, the Porsche 944, had a problem with the turbocharger when the blades moved and ground away on the edge of the turbocharger housing. That car will be back in the race today, but it'll be down on power and there'll be a bit more turbo lag. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Chris. Well, we'll return for those GT cars after this break.
I'm on the start line for the GT Championship race. Just one car on the grid at the moment, Tony Edmondson, who made fastest time. The news is that Rusty French hasn't as yet made the grid. He has had trouble with the car. He's blown a turbo. But, Tony, you must be pretty happy with the way the Alfa's gone. You haven't raced for a while, and now here you are in pole position.
Yeah, very happy, Evan. As you say, we haven't raced the car since November of last year at the AGP meeting here at Calder. It was initially meant to run in March of this year, and it crashed fairly heavily at Sandown. And the car was only finished at 6 o'clock on Thursday night, so it came here untested, so we are very happy with the way things are going.
Now, we're just waiting for Rusty French to appear there. He blew a turbo, I believe, in practice earlier this morning. He is coming now, but that's a big handicap for him.
It is, but I'm sure Rusty will overcome it. I've got to go, Evan.
Indeed, you must go, because they're just blowing the siren. Rusty French, in fact, has just taken his position on the line, and that is as close as you can get to missing the start of the race. Back to you, Gary.
Thanks, Evan. Well, there was the most amazing swapping of seats going on between Brownie and Rusty French. I thought French was going to have to drive Brown's car for a minute, but they have completed hurried repairs to the turbo on car number 3 there on the front row of the grid at the last minute, and so both cars from that team have taken their place on the grid. French alongside Edmondson on the front row, and just before they blast off, the 1 minute board about to go up, it's with great pleasure that we welcome Peter Brock to our commentary position. Pete?
G'day, Gary.
Better in here than out there today, I think.
Well, it is a bit chilly out there, but looking at the lineup there, I would have really liked to have had that Bob J. Monza out there amongst them all.
What's the story there?
Well, they simply ran out of time. Pat Purcell, who's been working on the car, has got obligations to build the Macedon Ford Falcon for the 300-kilometre race, the Scholastic 300 at Amaroo next weekend. So unfortunately, the Chev had to take a back seat in that episode, but we will be running it again apparently in the Grand Prix meeting here later in the year.
Well, Rusty French was cutting it a bit fine, I think, there, wasn't it, to get onto the...
Yes, yeah, and well, it'd be hard to say if it was an effective repair. One would imagine so, because it is something that they have to do periodically, replace turbocharger units on the Porsches. So one imagines it should be quite reliable.
It's great to see Tony Edmondson back on the track and competitive too in this Chevy powered Alfa of his.
That should be a very, very quick motor car, because it's got a big wing on the back now, pretty good aerodynamics, and it's got a full 6-litre engine, and it's got the 19-inch rear wheels, which really are far more capable of putting the power down than the old 10-inch wide wheels he used to use before.
That's an enormous width, 19 inches wide at the rear.
No, I'm sorry, it's not an inch diameter, yeah. And they would be probably 15 or 16 inches wide.
Yeah, you'd still be able to roll a tennis court fairly well with them, wouldn't you?
Absolutely, yes. They I imagine that he can smooth out the pits fairly comfortably every time he goes backwards and forwards to his garage.
Well, what sort of thoughts are going through the minds of Rusty French now, when having just made the line like that? You know, he must be still have his heart up in his mouth.
Well, one would imagine that Rusty will be trying to not do anything outrageous. He'll probably just try and drive the car for a couple of laps, and we've seen...
John Briggs gone round for another lap. He didn't stop at the Marshall sign. There he is now with the ex-JPS BMW Turbo. Last year's car, not this year's, the one that was fairly well destroyed in your little accident in Adelaide.
Yes, yes, indeed. That car, for instance, uses a 13-inch rear wheel, it appeared to me anyway, which was an Avon wheel. Avon tyre, which was similar to what we see on the Formula Pacifics.
He's going to get left behind.
Yes, the field is gone, and Briggs is a long way behind, and it's Rusty French who's made a good start, but on the inside also, it's the Alfa of Tony Edmondson going hard, but it'll be the big Porsche that goes first into the corner. So it's French from Edmondson, who's taken a very tight line on the inside, but being harried in there. Oh, there's a wide one there. Thompson, this has gone off Brian Thompson, the twin turbo Mercedes. Very wide, needed a long way back as the field comes up for the first time into Qantas corner. Rusty French, well, he started off well.
Yes, very, very well indeed. And a pretty tough time for Edmondson, one would imagine, to find a way past, unless you can do it in these earlier laps while the tyres are a bit cold.
Colin Bond doing well in third place right behind them, but I don't think Edmondson couldn't be any closer to French than he was through the corner there, almost under the spoiler. But the power of the Porsche counts on the straight.
Out of Valvoline corner into the back straight again. Rusty French, Tony Edmondson, Colin Bond. That's the order, top three.
Robin Doherty bringing his Tirana into the pits, just winding his way through the gate and out of the race. Tony Edmondson quicker on the corners, no doubt, and Colin Bond also like it around the back sections of the straight. Through corners, he is very fast. Edmondson loses out on sheer power, though, and the way they come through this corner is critical. He takes the tight line there, but watch the way the big Porsche 935, the John Sands entry, driven by Rusty French, just pulls away on the straight. There it goes. Just like the touch paper and fire.
2 laps down, 23 to go in this race. It's 25 laps of the corner circuit.
Colin Bond's hanging in very well there too. The Porsche is, well, in the hands of Alan Jones, of course. He was really getting it to go through corners very well, but they are a very difficult car to corner on these tight corners. Far more suited, you would probably imagine, to the European style of circuit, which is a lot faster and more open.
There's Colin Bond in 28. It's an entirely different type of Porsche, that one, to the 935, isn't it, Peter?
Yes, well, that's got an engine in the front, and it also drives through the rear axle, but it's more in the conventional setup of motor cars, like the car of Tony Edmondson's engine in the front, driving for the rear. So its basic balance is a little better.
And the balance is noticeable in these next couple of corners. Off with the brakes now as Colin goes down the back straight, down General Credit Straight. There he is. He makes up a bit of ground under braking. You can see him third in the queue. It's French from the Tasmanian driver, Tony Edmondson, then Colin Bond in car number 28.
Colin's really throwing that Porsche around.
43.08 flying lap time for Rusty French in the Porsche.
Glow weave is critical, Peter. You must come through here quickly to get the speed on the straight.
You've got to get that the right-hand front tyre going over that little bit of white concrete there, hitting the apex to really run it in straight.
Car 17, Brian Thompson, the Mercedes, into the pits.
Bob Jolly is running in fourth, a good position by him, having made up a lot of ground from 8th place on the grid in the Commodore, but he's back maybe 100 metres behind this man, Colin Bond, in third place. Well, Tony Edmondson again well placed. He really is close up. Colin Bond has a good view of the two of them just in front of them. He's no more than, well, you can see the distance there, maybe 20, 30 metres behind in third spot. A good placing at this stage of the race. If he can just stay within reach. Hasn't got anything like the power of the leading two cars, but does enjoy really good handling, but maybe dropping back just a little bit. Here goes Edmondson now, trying to poke his nose out, but again, the great power of the Porsche just takes over, and away goes French. Under braking, though, Edmondson will come closer, and maybe this lap, as he comes sweeping here through Valvoline, he might just make up the ground to make some sort of challenge.
Edmondson's got the nicer run through the corner, smoother exit, but one thing for sure is that Porsche really puts the power down. You can stomp on the power at the exit because of the weight on the rear wheels and the huge back wheels. It really gets the power down very well.
Peter Brock, how mindful would Rusty French be of the fact that repairs to the turbo were completed only minutes before he took the car out?
I think he'd be pretty happy by now. If anything was going to happen, it would have happened, and I'd say now he's forgotten about that. He's getting on with the race.
Where can Tony Anderson get by? What's the part of the circuit where he does have the opportunity to pass?
Well, I was looking at this particular moment. Tony's a bit wider now. Now, if he can just sort of get the car a good exit out of there, put the car up the inside, up the back straight, he can outbrake him through the inside. But he hasn't quite got the power to do that. This is one of the areas, if he's on the inside of that corner, if he gets a run out of the corner from the previous corner. And of course, coming down the main straight and going for that inside line and braking very late indeed. I noticed they're braking around the 200 metre marker down the front straight, and one would have imagined they could go to about 125. You can in Bob Jane's sponsor.
I understand that there's a penalty on Rusty French for jumping the start.
One hopes it's not the usual 1 minute penalty, because if he did have any advantage, it was minimal. Well, a little bit weaving around a little bit on the power there from Tony Everton. You can see the effect of that. He immediately lost 15 or 20 metres.
Yes, he just hooked the inside of the curve. He got onto the gravel and lost a lot of ground, so he's got to make it up again. But he is notably faster through this section of the curve. As he goes into glow weave, he does make up a lot of ground and might, in fact, get a quicker run through, because he has been hampered a bit in the past, being right on the tail of the Porsche, but maybe also he's lost the toe, because this is where the Porsche goes. That's the order of the race. The ones we don't see at the moment are Bob Jolly and the Commodore, who's back in third place. You can see the gap from the leader, 3.63 seconds. Then Graham Lusty and Peter Fitzgerald. They're the leading six.
Well, we've got Rusty French down to 42.50 seconds on our unofficial time, but still pretty accurate.
What a great battle between this pair. Colin Bond lurking in behind them, unable to get into a position to put any pressure on the leading pair at the moment. But I tell you what, one mistake up front, and Bondy will be right in the thick of it.
Well, now, this is an important part of the race, passing a couple of cars. It may just cause some sort of delay for Tony Edmonton, but they both seem to be past those two cars, the Mazda and the whatever it was. They're so heavily disguised they couldn't even pick the second car. There's Colin Bond.
I think that might have been a Gemini, as a matter of fact.
When it started live.
Well, it's John Chambers, car 47, yeah.
I have a feeling it might have been a Gemini. That I had something to do with the manufacturer of it at one stage.
Yes. I seem to remember you having some sort of coming together with a Gemini at that.
No, I'm building that car.
Oh, I see.
That particular car, yes.
Right. Well, Colin Bond also threading his way through the traffic, taking such good, concise lines, despite the fact that he's driving so hard.
And just up ahead of him, Rusty French seems to have opened up a bit of a gap now over Edmondson as they go into the back straight. He's just got that couple of car lengths break on him that he didn't have earlier. Laps to go in this 25-lap race.
Although I think just at this precise moment, Gary, it seems, although Colin's really giving it bootful through that right-hander, but it seems as if Rusty's closing right up now. And next time, I think the next camera shot we'll see is these will be pretty close. Indeed they are.
Tony Edmondson made up quite a lot of ground, took a different line in there, the flame spitting from the turbocharged engine and the slower cars pulling out wide to let the quick fellows through. Tony Edmondson then in the Chevrolet powered Alfa Romeo, coming down behind the Porsche 935 of Rusty French. Again, he's made up ground. Takes different lines to French, doesn't he? He tends to nip the corners as much as he can.
Yes, Tony's never been one for using the full width of the road generally. He never he attempts to use the centre of the road on the exits of corners.
Slight change there in the placings as you look down the field. Alan Brown has moved up into 6th position. Fitzgerald in 5th. Jolly 4th, and then the top 3 ahead of that. Bond in 3rd place, 2nd place Tony Edmondson, and Alan Brown getting now to the sub 42 seconds as he goes round. Rusty French rather.
The lap record held by Peter Brock in the Chev Monza, 40.37 seconds, so that they're almost 2 seconds out from the fast time.
We'll see if those placings stand when we return to this race at Calder after this break. nibbling away for 15 laps. Tony Edmondson has got the lead, but here comes Rusty French again, and French, my goodness me, this is really tight racing here.
Yes, Edmondson closed up a lot. He passed initially in this position. It just got down the back straight there. But French is not going to have it again, and he does have the legs on the straight. He knows that, so Edmondson has to do it again the hard way, round the corners. He's trying hard. He really has that Alfa wound up now, and he's right, I was going to say, on the tail of the Porsche. He's beside him. Now, this is a crucial corner for both cars. Edmondson can't afford to be balked by the Porsche because he doesn't have the same stunning acceleration, but you can't get much closer than that, can you, Peter Brock?
No, if I'd have been Tony, I'd have hung back a couple of car lengths and had a really good run at him out of the corner, because the Porsche is notoriously slow in the middle of part of the corner, just as you're starting to turn around.
Now, this is the way Tony Edmondson passed before. Came out wide exactly as he's doing now. Came on the inside on the exit to this corner, down towards Qantas. Can't do it this time, though. In fact, French, having learned his lesson, puts the car right in the middle of the track. He has the power, he has the position, and he's not going to let Edmondson pass again. So Edmondson comes once more, closing up under brakes.
In fact, where he passed was exactly what I reckoned early on there. Even if I was going to have a go at passing it, I'd do it up that back straight through getting a good run out of the corner before. And it seems as if that's the only area the Porsche is vulnerable in, because you can block through the S's and outpower it down the front straight.
This pair have left Colin Bond about 80 metres back now in third place, and in the meantime, almost unnoticed by everybody, the man that got left at the start because he took an extra warm-up lap and actually started the race 150 metres at the rear of the grid, and that's Briggs in the BMW, has overtaken most of the field and is now up in fourth spot, although a long way from the lead still.
And one wonders if Rusty French has been given a penalty for leaving the start too early. We haven't heard at this stage, I believe.
Well, we understand there is a penalty, and that's what it's for, but just what time is involved, we don't know.
Well, just as an observer of the start, I couldn't see any jump there, but let's see what happens when we hear the official result. There's Colin Bond. He's 3.5 seconds behind the leading pair, has two other slower cars he's about to lap to pass as he comes down the main straight.
5.5 laps remaining in this 25-lap race, heat 1 of the Humes Guardrail Cup, round 4 of the Australian GT Championship.
And Colin Bond just got on his line in time there as he was passing these slower cars, and managed to get on his tail to try and enjoy a bit of extra power down the straight. In the meantime, the man leading the race, who lost the lead briefly but has it back firmly in his grasp, is now coming on the tail of his teammate, Alan Brown. And this will be interesting to see how he gets by Alan Brown, and I suppose more interesting, how Tony Edmondson gets by the teammate of the leader. There's Brown just going through in the blue Porsche 935. Here they go.
Yes, one imagines there won't be a great deal of difference in straight line speed.
5 laps to go.
Well, he got by Alan Brown now. What can Tony Edmondson get by? No, sorry, he's still in front. Still in front. Right on the tail. Well, Alan will certainly know they're there, and this could be the most important couple of corners. Brown on the right. French coming on the inside. No, Brown decides he'll keep on going as hard as he can.
Brown, of course, is in 6th place, but he's about to be a lap down.
And it's allowed Tony Edmondson to close right up. And I'll tell you what, for sure, Rusty French will be saying, hey, listen, mate, you're supposed to be on my side.
Now, this is interesting because Brown probably has the legs. Yes, indeed he has. He can pull away from Edmondson as well. Now, how hard is he going to make it for Edmondson on this corner? No difficulty at all. Brown stays well out of the way, behaves like a true gentleman, and he tucks in behind. He said, OK, I can't catch him. I'm running 6th. I'll just watch what goes on for as long as I can. And what's going on is that French is pulling away a little bit. He now has maybe 2 lengths as they go past Bob Tyndall's Tirana. John Lusty about to be lapped for the 2nd time. Over and lets him through the inside. If only Tony Edmondson could get a clear run through here. One has the feeling that he'd be a couple of lengths in front by the start of the straight, and then we might have a different race. But each time they come down the straight, it's the power of the Porsche that just counts, and away it goes, and all that Edmondson can do is sit back and watch the German car put a couple of lengths on him. But when he brakes very late, comes in wide again. A bit of smoke from the tyres, a bit of a waggle from the tail. They had to pass the car in the middle of all that and made it a bit hectic.
2.5 laps remaining for the leading cars.
That might be just a little gap that Rusty wanted, because Tony Edmondson came in a little bit too quick. Maybe had a slight problem, missed a gear or something like that, but a little bit of a balk, and all of a sudden he's just off the pace.
French has done a good job, you know, hasn't he, taking over a car as fearsome as this, particularly one that had been driven by Alan Jones. It's not easy to take over a car driven by the world champion and put in the sort of performances he has. He's leading the championship and probably won't be beaten now. It's been good driving.
Yes, I think Rusty has probably silenced a few critics because last year he ran a car and it wasn't a great deal different from Alan's, and he wasn't nearly as quick as Alan, and that's to be expected, of course. But this year he's improved I would say he's improved dramatically, really, in terms of lap times that he has been achieving in various circuits.
Only 5 cars on the same lap at the present time.
And one of them about to succumb to the pressure. That's Peter Fitzgerald in the Porsche 930. Not as powerful as this model. He's in the one immediately in front, and he should get a good view of them passing him in about half a lap's time.
Well, they've only got the 1 lap to go for the race leader, Rusty French. So Fitzgerald might just hold him out and not find himself lapped.
I don't think so.
Well, Fitzgerald's certainly going to try and make a race of it. Doesn't like being passed. No one does. Yeah,
but he has been.
Yes.
In no uncertain term.
Now, can the Alfa get by as well?
They may get by Fitzgerald, but time's just about run out for him to get by French again. He did it mid-race briefly. French took the lead back, and apart from that one brief moment, has led from go to woe. As he comes down to take the checkered flag, Rusty French, Tony Edmondson in second place as they cross the line in this first heat of the Humes Guardrail Cup, round 4 of the Australian GT Championship. Third placing in the race will go to Colin Bond. John Briggs, the man that started 150 metres from the rear of the grid, is going to come in and take 4th place, but he's going to be the best part of 3/4 of a lap behind the winner. Pretty good performance by him nonetheless, and he might have been a little more interesting if he'd taken his place in the field. Why he took off and took an extra warm-up lap, I'll never understand. Remains to be seen too if we can ascertain just what sort of penalty has been imposed on Rusty French for supposedly jumping the start. He didn't appear to gain too much advantage to us. If it's a 1-minute penalty, well, that's a lap around here. It's more than a lap.
Yes, it'll put him back to 4th place at least.
Yeah, a lap and a quarter.
Well, a good drive by French, under a lot of pressure from Tony Edmondson, who, let's face it, was the Australian champion for a number of years in this category and drove a tremendous race in his return. But French withstood the pressure, was passed once, came back in champion style, and he's added to the lead he enjoys in the Australian GT Championship. Rusty French then, first past the line and tentatively winner in this round of the Humes Guardrail Australian GT Championship. Back with more action soon at Calder Park, Melbourne.
Smith, to me, coming out there in the red car, followed by Peter Macro, and these, of course, are the Formula 1 cars coming out on the track to begin their warm-up in preparation for their event, a preliminary event for the Cheviot Trophy race, the final of which later this afternoon is going to be a real thriller, both for Formula 1 and Formula 2 cars. Just getting back to the preceding event, it's pretty hard to give you official placings there because we're not really quite sure, depending on what sort of penalty, as we said, is imposed on Rusty French. And there was a bit of confusion there with John Briggs at the finish as well, Peter Brocco.
Yes, he in fact was shown the checkered flag because he was about 2 or 3 car lengths ahead of Rusty French, and he must have figured it was for him as well, which because it wasn't, he was almost a lap down, and he trickled around and just sort of pulled up with the winners. So goodness knows if he missed out on a lap or just what happened, but very confusing.
Well, the Formula 1 and Formula 2 cars that will be running in the Cheviot Trophy out on the circuit at the moment and going to a lot of trouble to warm up their tyres because this will be of critical importance on such a cold day.
Yes, well, they use a control tyre, as is probably well known now in this form of racing, particularly these Formula Pacific or Mondial cars. They choose what they call a control tyre to keep costs down so that all competitors use the same type. They choose a control tyre because of its durability and cost and the wear factor, etc. And of course that means a fairly hard compound. And August or July at Calder in Melbourne is not conducive to hard tyre compounds.
Talking to a few of the drivers before, they say, well, what will happen is the leading two, and the leading two on the grid are John Smith, and we're looking at now in car number 71, the Rolt RT4 and Alfie Costanzo, who will join him in the Tiger. They might just open a nice wide gap for the two behind them, Lucio Cesario and Peter McCrow, and persuade them to run through on the first corner and let them go straight off the track because their tyres won't be warm enough.
This sounds like wishful thinking, and it's always good to have a nice positive approach.
But after last week's incident at Lakeside, I think that Costanzo and Smith will be trying to keep well apart, because they came together at Lakeside when Alfie had a brake lock-up on the first corner after the start. Smith was halfway round him on the outside, and with the brake lock-up, Alfie just gave him a shunt and sent him straight off the circuit.
Well, Alfie Costanzo, who was fastest in practice with a time of 40.51, he will be first. He will be trying to be first in the corner and stay there, I say, this time. In the meantime, let's see what actually happened in that last race, because we have Christa Fraga with Rusty French.
Rusty, how did the race go?
Well, it was a bit of a rush for us to get the car on the grid because we had an engine overbuild last night, and the turbo that was on the side that was damaged last night, we only found out half an hour before the race that was no good as well. So David Beard from John Sands suggested I drive the other car, but it would have meant that I had to start from the back of the grid. So I said, look, I know you've got to try and keep your sponsors happy, but I said, David, I'd really like to try from the front of the grid, and we'll just take the punt on the turbo. And now the guys are going back to put it on properly. It was only just sort of half hanging on, but it obviously got the job done.
Halfway through the race, things were getting very close with Tony Edmondson. Did you have to dial up more horsepower?
No, well, actually, when Tony came through and passed me, I thought, well, I don't know whether he's feeling fitter than I am, but I thought, well, I'll let him run in front of me for a few laps, but I was able to pick him up within a lap under brakes. And, of course, the big decision maker here today for the GT Championship is the next heat, so we've got to do all that again. If Tony beats me in the next one, well, he wins the championship. If I win it, I win it, but it's a hard way of doing it. I'd sooner do 50 laps straight.
Thank you, Rusty French. Back to you, Gary.
Okay, Chris, and that confusion, just as these cars take off on a warm-up lap over the penalty that was supposedly levied on Rusty French. It was not Rusty French. There was some confusion downstairs. It was, in fact, on John Briggs. So whether or not he took the checkered flag is now academic.
Yeah, so a good win to Rusty French. He won the race fair and square, but he's got to do it all again, as he was saying, in the main race, which is still to come on the program.
He's in a pretty comfortable position, though, in the series, isn't he, on points?
Right.
That's the grid.
And the times on the right are their practice times yesterday. Alfie Costanzo, fastest with a 40.51. As you can see, just 2/10 quicker than John Smith, his real adversary in this championship. Behind him, Lucio Cesario, just a little slower again, and Peter McCrow back in the 42. There's a mixture of Formula One, that's Australian Formula One or Formula Pacific cars, and Australian Formula 2 cars. But it's Costanzo in the Tiger, the only one of his type in Australia. We've had a bit of trouble already with the cold tyres. We were talking about one of the cars having spun out already, so tyres and the cold weather here certainly will be a factor in the race today. Graham Blee in the Formula 2 Cheetah was the one who spun out. He's just now weaving the car down the road to put some more temperature in the rubber to try and get them warm enough to stay on the track, because they've got to have tyres at a proper temperature, these slicks, to really hold the road properly. If they're not and they go too hard in the corner, they're almost undrivable, right, Peter Brock?
Yes, the difference between the grip of a cold tyre versus one at correct operating temperature is absolutely phenomenal. You can't believe it. I had a drive of one of these cars earlier this year, and it was warm weather here at Calder, and still at that time of the year it took 3 or 4 laps of hard driving to get them up to operating temperature. And when they start working, you can absolutely throw these cars into the corner and they accept absolutely full throttle. Without it, they don't accept all that much power at all. They just tend to sort of slide off the track very easily indeed.
Well, will these tyres be warm enough now, or will they still have to put some more work into them?
Oh, there's no way none to be warm enough yet, but...
So caution then is the word for the first couple of laps.
Pole position is car number 1, Alfredo Costanzo, alongside him in 71, John Smith. Second row, car 16, Lucio Cesario, along with Peter Macro in car 25. Clive Millis in car number 8, and Graham Blee in car 2. Set to go. You'll notice a car 27 in there. Alan Brown's at the wheel after a quick change out of the Porsche. And there they go. And great start by car 16. Lucio Cesario got away very quickly, trying to get through on the inside behind Smith and Costanzo, but can't do it. Costanzo has the lead into the first corner. Whoa, no, Cesario snuck through, and what a brilliant manoeuvre.
How did he do that? Cesario leads, Smith is after him, but side by side does Alfie Costanzo come back, but Cesario went on the inside. I thought there was no road at all. He found it, though. He's leading from John Smith and Alfie Costanzo, and what an incredible bit of driving.
Well, obviously, he's got his tyres operating at closer to the correct temperature than the other fellas. Now, whether he pulled an old trick and had them warmed up in the garage, I'd say he didn't. He's
gone. He's gone hard. Can he avoid the fence? No, he can't. No, he can't. Well, maybe look at him shaking his head in frustration now, his fists. And Lucio is not happy with himself. Going very hard on Calder, got in front. Didn't expect to be there so early. Paid the penalty as he came swinging round Glowweave corner. Got on the gravel. Got the car almost back, but then the car spun and snapped to the left and straight into the fence, and that's it for Lucio Cesario. And in the lead now, John Smith. Let's watch it again. Just tell us what happens here, Peter Brock.
Okay, he's got quite a wide entry into that corner, although he's fairly close to the white concrete line you can see there. He's got onto the apex well. He's got a little bit crossed up there. Okay, overcorrected. Now, purely tyre performance.
If he could have just held it here, but he put a lot of power on and the car snaps around and he's gone.
Yes, he should have just thanked his lucky stars. He's broken the front wheel there. That's what he's looking at now. Not a great deal of damage to the car, though, fortunately.
Well, at least he'd make a good basketball player. That was a fair shot with the helmet.
It wasn't bad at all. He's done it a few times, though.
John Smith.
Well, Smithy's been pretty much the luckless driver in this class the last couple of seasons, hasn't he?
Yes, Smithy has been known as being a very hard charger and the person who's often on the pace.
41.30 flying lap time for John Smith on that second lap.
And he's pulled quite a gap on Alfie.
Peter Macro in third place. Stands out like Kermit the Frog in that green car.
Macro, the green car we're talking about, by the way, really has the cheetah going. It's performing the best we've ever seen in Australian Formula One events. We're used to seeing the imported Rolt or Tiger chassis doing best. It's a Rolt that John Smith's driving, a Tiger that Alfie Costanzo's driving and bouncing around on the rough at the back of the circuit.
These cars use horrendously hard spring rates, and as you can see when they hit the bumpy part of the track, there's not too much suspension travel.
Alfie's only a small fellow, and it's very hard to distinguish him from the car, particularly as he had his helmet painted the same way.
40.96 on the last lap for John Smith. That's a long, long way outside the Formula One lap record here, held by Alan Jones at 36.9.
It's interesting to see that the lap times are coming down every lap as the tyres approach their limits of adhesion.
Just a fleeting glimpse in of Peter Macro in the third car, the Australian-built Cheetah. He qualified third too, or fourth rather, with a time of 42 seconds behind Lucio Cesario. There's Peter Macro. Much higher up in the car than Alfie Costanzo sits in his Tiger.
But a big fellow. Peter Macro's probably a foot taller or so than Alfie, so that extra length has got to go somewhere.
Yeah, we talk about saving weight in cars and the shape of cars. Whoops, as we at the bottom of the straight we see Mark Potter in the Alfa in a Formula 2 car just gracefully easing the car tail first off the track. He's still got the motor going. He's searching for first gear. No, he's taking his gloves off, I think. But back to the question of size. If you can't do much about shaping the driver or taking weight off him, can you? There must be a big handicap for a person as tall as Peter Macro against someone like Alfie Costanzo or John Smith.
Yes, well, of course, international racing is tending now in this style of racing to move to an overall weight factor rather than having a bare car to try and change any inbuilt handicap system you may have from having a minimum weight in the car, and then the drivers can be anything.
One of the photographs I liked that I took at a Formula One race last year is of Alain Prost, the Frenchman who now leads the World Championship. He's talking to his team manager in the Renault team, and he is standing on the fence and looking at the team manager eye to eye. That's how small Alain Prost is.
And Jacques Lafitte, a lot of those guys who did very, very well in the mid-70s in small capacity Formula classes in France. It was amazing how the guys who were, no more than probably 50 or 60 kilos were the winners.
3 laps to go in this preliminary for the Formula 1 and Formula 2 cars.
Clive Millis is catching up and doing a good job there in car number 8, the Paragon Shoes entry. He has been closing up on Macro.
At the moment, just ahead of Peter Lana and Brian Sampson, and as you said, closing on Peter Macro. Macro holding down third, Alfie Costanzo second, and Johnny Smith still leading the race with 2.5 laps to go.
Smith is leading in a Rolt RT4, and that's the same sort of car that Millis is driving. Built by Ron Toranak, the Australian former partner of Jack Brabham in their World Championship winning enterprise. the dominant car in this category of racing around the world.
2 laps now for John Smith as they come down into Valvoline corner again. Alfa Costanzo behind him. Somebody else is off over there at the back.
A bit hard to pick up the number there.
It looked like Terry Ryan in 36. It's a Formula 2 car. Rolled RT1.
Well, Alfie Costanzo does have John Smith in his sights, but that's about all. He's not making any ground on him. Smith just tucking his head around the corners to counter the effects of the great sideways force in cornering. Comes across to face the start-finish line.
Last lap board is out for him. 1 to go.
Well, does this mean a change of fortune for John Smith? Probably the unluckiest driver in single-seat racing over the last 3 seasons. In front this time, though, and there's nothing much that Alfie Costanzo can do about it, I don't think. He's behind, he's losing a little bit of ground. And while Alfie, the last car in that pack coming down the straight, is driving as determinedly as ever, there's nothing much he seems to be able to do about reducing the lead of this man, John Smith. Well, John has a few cars to pass. He might be quite content to leave them there as long as they go quickly enough to get to the finish line ahead of him. Just one more corner to go through, and John Smith will take the checkered flag. He's got some traffic to pass, but the checkered flag is out, and John Smith is the winner of this heat of the Cheviot Trophy.
About 8 car lengths on Alfie Costanzo in car 1, and a big gap back now to actually a scrap for 3rd and 4th coming down the main straight the last time, but Macro is going to hold on and take 3rd place.
From Clive Millis, Peter Lana and Brian Sampson. Those are the leading 6. And that's the way they finish 1-2 with Alfie Costanzo pulling up the outside just to wave his congratulations to John Smith, winner of the Cheviot Trophy. That's how they finish. John Smith, Alfie Costanzo, Peter Macro. Back with the action from Calder Park soon.
That's the car that belongs to Lucio Cesario, and that's what happens after you hit a fence with it.
It's a moment drivers dread, I think, when you've got the pit crew who arrive and say, what the hell happened? And then you've got to make your explanation.
Especially after he had performed such a brilliant passing manoeuvre on the first corner of the race, and we're going to have a look at that in replay off the front row of the grid. We had Alfie Costanzo and John Smith. Cesario made a brilliant start, looked as though he couldn't get underneath them going down the first corner at Valvoline, pulled out very wide, cut back sharply on the corner and got through both of them in the one brilliant passing manoeuvre.
Now watch him, he's the 3rd car there. Now watch him pass both of them. You wouldn't think there was room there, would you? But here he goes. He's through.
Beautiful work, but
he's through. Maybe because of that, Peter Brock, that he felt compelled to go a little bit too hard with the tyre still a bit cold.
I'd say so, yes. He should have thought the left well enough alone, I guess, back there before. But
now let's see how he brought himself undone.
Well, he's hooked the wheel over the apex, over the curb right now.
Now he's
overcorrected, yes, and now he's just dropped the wheel on the dirt. Now, he was still okay, but would have dropped a few places.
But the power is on, you see.
He's power on now, and of course he's shot back the other way.
What's the future for a driver like Lucio Cesario, Peter Brock?
Look, he's a very talented fellow, there's no doubt about that. He's fast, he does all the right things, except that he makes errors of judgment such as that. And I think it'd be fair to say that what he needs is a very strong mentor. He needs someone there to guide him. And I know at that stage of my career and Colin Bond, we had a person like Harry Firth who told us exactly what to do, when to go fast and what tactics to apply. And I think that if this fella had the same sort of fellow around as Harry Firth was to me, that we really see his potential.
OK, we're going to return to Calder Park in just a moment for series production racing. Cars are about to move off on a quick warm-up lap in preparation for the Stanlite Electronics Trophy for Group E touring cars. Series production in common parlance.
And we have the unusual sight of a Falcon up there among the leading cars. Mark Pickett in the Fairmont, the 3rd car on your screen with the blue flashes over the headlights. He put the car on the 2nd row of the grid in practice yesterday. So it's good to see a little bit of a change among some of the cars instead of the domination of Mazda RX-7s and Nissan 280ZXs we've seen. One
of the top contenders in the 280s, by the way, is missing from this race, John Giddings. They had a warm-up heat earlier in the day prior to the start of our telecast, and he did some damage internally to the car. He didn't bingle it or get involved in any scrap on the track, but he did pull into the pits during that warm-up, and hasn't been sighted since. So obviously some quite serious engine trouble has kept him out here. That's John Fitzgerald going through in the RX-7. Stephen Brooks also RX-7 in the big Fairmont, as you can see, and tucked in behind him the menacing black shape of the 280 ZX of David Selden.
Selden further back on the grid than we might have expected, and it's Peter Fitzgerald who'll start from pole position in the pal colour car with no one alongside in the absence of John Giddings. On the second row you'll see lined up Stephen Brook in the Perrier car number 2 and the Fairmont of Mark Pickett, the Ming car number 88.
Back towards the rear of the grid also a number of the Alfa Suds competing in this. Of course, we're going to be seeing them all out on the track a little later in the Alfa Romeo Trophy race. There we go. Fitzgerald quickly away, but so is Stephen Brook this time, slotting into second place as they go down towards the corner for the first time. Car number 16, Alan Fender, trying to tuck in there in third spot, although Selden getting through in the 280 on the inside.
And Fender's gone wide. Fender didn't have much room there. He got forced out wide, and he's going to have the extreme pleasure of seeing the rest of the field a long way away when he finally rejoins the track. Bad luck for the Sydney sign rider, but at the other end of the spectrum, it's Peter Fitzgerald in the pal colour car leading from his long-time rival, Stephen Brook, in the second RX-7. Then we have Datsuns and Fairmonts behind, but it's this man leading the race, Peter Fitzgerald, one of the busiest drivers in Australia, usually doubles up with different cars at a meeting. Now running in the series production car, and it's he and his Mazda rival who head the field with 8 laps to go.
Fitzgerald, Brook, Selden, Peter Dane in car 41 in the Fairmont.
Interesting to note that car number 88, the White Falcon, is a 5-litre Ford Fairmont, it's a V8. And the other Falcon back there is the, I think that's Jeff Newton's car, is the 6-cylinder. So that car on camera right now is the V8, which of course is out of production now. And the red car is...
Is that Des Gibbs 164? He has a Falcon.
64, yes, that's a 4.9.
There he is.
Now that's down on the book here is a white Falcon. That's why I'm confused. It doesn't look very white to me, except his helmet, I suppose. That's also a V8 auto, I imagine, and the Falcon behind is the 6-cylinder.
Under the rules of series production, only certain models from selected stables are allowed to compete. So, which is why you're seeing automatic V8s rather than manual models, because some of the manuals just aren't allowed. It being felt by the people who control motorsport in this country that would make them just too harsh, too competitive, so they're not allowed to compete. So it's automatic V8s versus manual rotaries and 6-cylinders and so on, and the selection of other cars. Now, in the meantime, Stephen Brook being given quite a bad time by the Nissan 280 ZX of David Selden.
Yes, that's one of the reasons you don't see a whole Commodore out there at the moment. Actually, we're simply not allowed to race the good ones. Because I'm quite sure they'd run away from the race, to be perfectly honest. I did a couple of laps in my own road car here a few weeks ago, and they were about nearly 3 seconds faster than pole position was for this race. So I can understand Cam's reluctance.
Yes, they're trying to keep racing as even as they can, but the category has been dominated by 2 cars, the Mazda RX-7 now leading the race, and the Nissan 280 ZX. Running at the moment in 3rd place with David Selden on the wheel just behind Stephen Brook. There's Brook in front. Selden trying to just put the rather long nose of the Nissan there between him and the corner. Didn't make it out and has to be content with 3rd place.
I would have thought by common definition, though, that a Commodore was more a series production car than some of those that are racing.
Well, a 280 ZX is not every man's car, nor is an RX-7, I guess. And it has been a point of a certain amount of contention now for some time that those cars have virtually been allowed to win, and you've handicapped the cars, which are in fact quicker, out of the racing, which are the normal bread and butter cars and identified by the public as being normal family type saloons.
Other cars that aren't allowed to race are some of the BMWs. The 323 I think is not allowed.
No.
Nor is the Alfa Romeo GTV6, the new 6-cylinder model. That I believe is not as yet eligible, although I know Alfa Romeo are trying to get the car and have hopes, in fact, to have one running next year and maybe even running at Bathurst in fairly potent form, but at the moment not allowed.
Moving into the back straight once more, 4.5 laps to go for Peter Fitzgerald in the lead in this race, the Stenolite Electronics Trophy. Stephen Brook still in 2nd place. in a similar type car. That's Peter Dane there, also in an RX-7. And sandwiched in that little group is David Selden in the 280 ZX, just disappearing off the left of the screen. There goes Dane. And the big Fairmont just behind him.
Some of the cars beautifully prepared. People obviously have spent a lot of money on these cars. They're not allowed to change them mechanically, but they do lavish attention in terms of the paint finish and preparation on them. They're outstandingly good-looking cars.
A challenge here from David Selden, so he's able to sit remarkably close, and yet he's not able to quite find a way past there.
Brooke leading him all across the track. When Brooke goes for the line, Selden follows to make sure he doesn't get an advantage. But they're just as they were last lap, and Brooke is still staying in front, and he just cannot peg back Peter Fitzgerald, who still is somewhat 5-6 car lengths in front of this group. That's the leading batch, as you can see. It's Fitzgerald from Brooke, from Selden, then Jones, Pickett and Gibbs.
Third last lap.
There's the gap, as you can see, only 1.05 of a second between the leader and the second man. In fact, the second and third cars have closed up a bit on Peter Fitzgerald. Only 2 laps to go. There's not much they can, they don't have much time to do much about it. Fitzgerald seems a little quicker on the straight. He certainly has a slightly longer lead at the end of the straight than at the beginning.
Perhaps, Evan, too, he should point out to any of the viewers that, in fact, works teams or manufacturers are discouraged from participating in this class of racing. It was conceived to be a class of racing for the amateur, for up-and-coming people. They wanted to keep money out of the formula, and consequently graded drivers, and in fact anything that remotely smells of a works team, although I do notice that Datsun does have some doubtful signage on it. It's the New South Wales Datsun Dealers Association. And Leo Geegan, of course, is a man who has been sneaking around that team for a while. There's a wily man on one end. He's probably standing not too far away at the moment. But the it has been envisaged that that type of racing is for amateurs, and that's why we don't see the Holden dealer teams or Moffats or anyone else like that involved in this racing.
On their last lap.
And Brooke has closed up, hasn't he? Now, if he's going to do anything, he's got to do it now. And he's certainly close enough to pose the challenge that he would like to have been threatening Peter Fitzgerald with for the whole race. He now has, what, 3 corners in which he can do something. He's a very fast man around the corners, Brooke. Mind you, so is Fitzgerald. So 3 more bends to go. Now, can Brooke get by? Here's the first one. Coming into DB, the second bend. And Brooke is so close. So the critical one will be Glow Weave. If he can just go out wide and get a fast exit, he's going wide there now. But can he get inside and make the fast run, which he must do? Fitzgerald will try and hold the tight line. And nose to tail, they come round. They've got 400 metres to go. I don't think that the Perrier car can do it. Brooke is trying hard. He will try and snap out, but he just doesn't have the acceleration. And the checkered flag will go to Peter Fitzgerald. Stephen Brooke second, David Selden third. That's the way they finished in the Stanlite Electronics race for Group E or Series Production cars. Peter Fitzgerald first, Stephen Brooke second, David Selden third. Well, a good win to Fitzgerald. Did everything right.
Yes, and he withstood that challenge near the end there. I started my career really racing this type of racing, limited power, you have to be very accurate, etc. And noticing his line there through the essence into the finishing straight, he used all the road he had to use to block the other driver, and got a very, very nice exit, and a nice job of driving really for Peter Fitzgerald.
I think he's typical of so many drivers. He's a man of a lot of talent, hasn't had a lot of backing in the past. He now has Pal Colour behind him. But it must put a tremendous load on the shoulders of drivers when they know that maybe they haven't got enough money to front up for the next race. You know, it almost makes you drive in a desperate fashion to try and get the attention of sponsors. So you say, I need the money to go racing. Look, you know, you can see how good I am. Must put a big load on them, Peter.
Well, I guess so. At various stages of my career, I have been in similar situations, I might add, where people you are trying to get some money together to perhaps run a very major series of races, particularly Sandown and Bathurst and that type of racing. And you know you've got to win this race you're in to pay the bills, to get the bits, to get to the next major meeting. And that is an added amount of pressure, there's no doubt about that.
Right, so the cars then, there's the Mazda RX-7 first and second, the Nissan 280ZX in third place. Fourth is another RX-7. Fifth and sixth are the Ford Falcons, or a Fairmont and a Falcon. That's the way they finished in the Stanlite Trophy. Well, more action when we return.
Well, conditions might be a little cool, but the racing was pretty hot. You look all in, son.
I certainly am. The Porsche took a lot out of me.
As the cars go out for this next race, it was one of the things that I wanted to ask you, Peter, about racing in the two different categories on the same day. It really is a quick change for you, isn't it?
Yes, well, we just got out of the Porsche and straight into this, and fortunately we've got a 2 or 3 race break before the next Porsche race, because it takes a lot out of me. It's a lot harder to drive than the Mazda.
You were very pleased with your performance, but a little bit surprised to hear that Stephen Brook, although finishing second, nudged you out of a lap record.
Yes, I thought I'd actually broken it because the boys had held me at a 4.9, which was 3/10 under the record, so I backed off a little bit and thought I'll get it home, and now I find Steve's taken it off me. But he's a top driver, so he deserves it.
It must take a little more to adapt to the change in cars in this weather as well, because they get pretty twitchy with tyres in these very cold conditions in the Porsche, but maybe not so much in these.
Yes, you're right.
Yeah,
Definitely.
John Waller's here from Stanlite, and he's got a presentation to make to you.
Congratulations, Peter. I couldn't think of a better way of starting our involvement. This is Stanlite Electronics' first involvement in motorsport, and in particular Fitzgerald Racing. Let's hope there are a few more. Please accept the Stanlite trophy plate on our behalf.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank my sponsors, Calder, for backing me, and also Stanlite, who are involved in the Porsche, for backing this meeting as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to John Wall from Stanlite. Congratulations again to Peter Fitzgerald. More motor racing action to come as we take you back to our main commentary position.
Thank you very much, Gary. And we have a real mixed bag of cars here, Peter Brock. It's a handicap for sports sedans. And these are the fellas that don't get a Guernsey in the big race.
Yes, and a lot of these cars really constitute a lot of the low bucks teams that you see that don't get in the spotlight, but nevertheless, I suppose, are the grounding for most of our up-and-coming young drivers. In fact, a lot of people ask me, you know, how do I get into motor racing on a top level? Well, this is how you start. You race these type of cars in these type of races, and if you're any good, believe me, people will notice you.
And it's, I think, also an indication of the effort that lots of people put into these cars, not just the driver, but their friends who help them prepare them, because a lot of these will be built in garages in the backyards of places. You can see a mixed bag of cars, from a fairly new Falcon to old Tiranas and little Datsuns and Geminis and Mazdas and all the cars that are available fairly cheaply that people can still squeeze a lot of performance from.
Yes, well, yeah, I guess looking down the line, there's a lot of old Tiranas, which are very, very cheap to build up and race. A few minis on the front row of the grid there. You got a little Datsun 1000, I guess it is.
I didn't even know what it was in the program. It's left anonymously. All we know is it's car 3 in the silver, and it's John's series, but it is a little Datsun 1000, I think.
Yes.
With spoilers and tail fins. And you can imagine the work that he and his mates have put into building this car.
Yes, it's also very rewarding, because you can actually, in this class of racing, sit down and bolt on a different spoiler or modify the engine how you wish, and you can do it very cheaply if the rules aren't very restrictive. And as I said, this has become a very popular grounding place for young drivers and for mechanics, because it's important that mechanics get their grounding somewhere along the line. And also you can show a bit of good old Aussie ingenuity, and if you want to put a bigger engine or a better engine in a little car, well, go for it.
Alongside the car number 3, John Series, is 19, the Gemini, entered by the Sports Sedan Association, number 19, Jeff Davidson. And he's running a Gemini with what appears to be a 3-litre Holden motor. Well, it's a 3-litre something. And they're just waiting to be dispatched on their warm-up lap. A Mini is behind them, car number 98, Peter Blood. The Cooper S, the ubiquitous Cooper S. And then behind we have a big Falcon.
Yeah, little Tirana. And here's a capitalist, you know. He's got a late model car, this bloke with the Falcon.
Well, 95 is Dennis Saunders in the Tirana, and 67, the capitalist that Peter was referring to, is Mike Emery, a fairly well-known name in this category of racing, in his Falcon XD. Cars being dispatched 2 by 2 on their warm-up lap, just to make sure that they can warm their cars up and things are okay.
This is the handicap, I'm afraid.
Oh,
he's dropping the flag.
You mean we're underway?
We're underway, and there's certain people, I think, just driving on till they felt like it. But
okay, 6 laps the distance. The start of walking down the grid, starting cars. This takes you back a few years to a different era of motor racing.
And these are fantastic fun handicaps. I love them.
93 just underway is Fred Mundy from the Ford 4 Car Club in a Mazda. And the last two cars away, number 29, which is Paul Stewart, and car number 11, Gary Ellis in a Tirana. Last man away, Paul Stewart in a Mazda RX-2. And here are the leaders.
So, Evan, we won't see too much happening here for a few laps as they all start, and then they'll gradually start to bunch up. And the theory, of course, is that we get about 20 cars trying to cross the line at all one time, but that probably won't happen, of course.
Well, John Series is still leading from Davidson and the little Mini of Peter Blood. That's the way they started, that's the way they still are. And the field all in pursuit, and theoretically they should all catch him at the finish line about 5.5 laps from now. Or 4.5, depending on where you started in the field.
Now look at this little trinket on television here at the moment. I mean, little Dutch 1000, Evan. Now, you never ever drove one of those, did you? You've driven just about everything else in racing.
Yeah, I haven't, you're right, I haven't driven one of those. In fact, I can't think of anyone else who ever has. It doesn't look like your average race car, but he's doing a good job. He's having a look around the back to see who else is coming there. He's got the Mini on his tail now, Blood, who has dispatched Davison.
I might add that that particular little dance there, I'm not really laughing if any people out there listening are connected with that car, because I had a worse motor car when I started off racing.
Bill Emeny is trying to find a way out. As you can see, he's finding a fairly treacherous path. There's been a lot of rain here, and the main risk of the day is not that he's going to retire from the race, but he'll get bogged. Now he's back on the track.
Looks a bit like the motocross they used to have here.
Yes, oh, I remember that well, the old rallycross. Laying a nice track of mud as Emeny rejoins the circuit, which will be of interest to cars that come along in his trails for a while. Seri's still leading.
It's hard to believe, isn't it?
Well, he's driving it well. He's trying to encourage it by nodding his head forward as one would a horse. And the car's light enough to respond. But I can look at that and admire the sort of dedication that goes into building cars like this. This fella is enjoying his motor racing. What's more, he's doing it very well, isn't he? He's still out front, but look at the pack behind him. The Mini has disappeared. Davison is back in the pack. Here comes Mike Emery in the big Falcon. And I think he's going to engulf the little Datsun before too long. And some of the faster fellas now joining the fray. Davison just being dispatched by a couple of the quicker cars. But Emery's the one with the big threat at the moment. We can expect to see him maybe in the lead before the lap is over. Let's see, though. Here's Mike Emery. This shows the real contrast between the types of cars that can run in this event. A fairly modern Falcon versus a little Nissan that even the makers have forgotten about, I would think. But no, Emery himself's under some sort of challenge. 56, one of the Tiranas is pulling out there. That's Brett Yulden. He's making a real move on Emery. He won't get him on the straight, but he might be quick around the corners. He's going to hold on to the line, and he's going to bluff him out of the corner, and Emery has to give way, and now he's back into third.
And he's also left the gate wide open. And who's that Greg Jordan coming through?
Yes, car 15, Greg Jordan in the Tirana also got through.
Not looking very healthy.
No, nice purple car and blue smoke behind. Doesn't quite match up. Oh, and that's what happened to Blood. You could say that it's clotted out there on the track.
11.5 to go.
Well, the leader has suddenly lost his moment of glory.
Yes, engulfed. 1, 2, 3. Two of them are past him.
Brett Yulden leading at the moment from 15, which is Greg Jordan in the smoking purple Tirana. Yulden leads.
Last lap board is out. They're on their last lap.
Series is holding on well in the little Datsun, isn't he? He's back in about 4th place at the moment. He'll be delighted with that. At least he'll see the checkered flag when it's dropped for the first time, which isn't a bad sort of sign.
Yes, my word.
Yulden leads. Nicely presented Tirana.
Looks like the Falcon still hasn't got the little Datsun back there.
Well, I can't see anyone catching Yulden at the moment. He's got himself
Tirana 1-2.
That's right. So it's Yulden in 56, who will finish ahead of Greg Jordan in 15. Smoking or not, it's good enough. And the question is, can Series hold off third place? He's got Emery behind him in the whole field, but he's going to. The little Datsun that started first is going to get third place, and that's a terrific result for John Series. Mike Emery just behind in the Falcon XD in fourth place, and a whole lot of cars coming in on the straight. You can see them for yourself. But a Tirana result in this 6-lap handicap.
Yes, quite an assortment of cars that went round in that race. And but they go, and the drivers are keen, and they put a lot of hard work and a lot of long hours into the preparation of them.
And remarkably good handicapping, Gary, to get cars so close. That's how they finished. And the next race here, one of the highlights of the day, with some of the top names in Australia in exactly similar cars. This will be the Alfa Trophy. Second last round, a most important race. That's coming up next when we return to Calder Park on the 7 Network.
Back at Calder Park, the Alfa Suds coming onto the track for the Alfa Trophy final here today. And as Evan Green said, some of Australia's top racing names competing in these cars. And the racing in the series so far has been thriller-minute stuff up at Amaru Park in Sydney, where the last round, the deciding round possibly, will be next week. Colin Bond leading the series at the moment from Dick Johnson, then David Selden and Joe Beninka. Right now, though, we've got some further information in the garages from Chris DeFrago.
Thank you, Gary. We've got Brian Thompson, who is a Shepparton truck dealer. Brian, what happened in the opening round of that GT race for you?
Chris, it's another stage in the development of the car to suit this new GT regulations that we've got. The car has been re-engineered power unit transmission, and we've now broken the next weakest link, which is one of the drive axles.
How long is it since you've raced here?
Well, I did have a couple of short drives in the Benz last year when John Bowe went into the Formula 1 category, but really seriously 7 years.
And it was a rather unfortunate finish.
Well, 7 years ago, yes. In fact, it was so unfortunate and so frustrating that I just went away for 7 years.
You were one place off winning $100,000.
That's true, and we built a car at that stage specifically for the Marlborough Series, our Volkswagen Chev. We ran second the first year in its development year to Bob Jane, and we thought, well, next year is our year. We had the point score all the year, and we entered the last event equal points, and we lost an engine half a lap to go, and it was just too frustrating.
But you'll be right this afternoon for the second heat.
Oh yes, we've got another set of axles here. They're Harrop Engineering componentry that we're fortunate to have, and we think that given the fact that they're new, they'll get us through this session, but it is another factor that we'll just have to redevelop.
Thank you, Brian Thompson, and back to you, Gary.
Okay, Chris, well, they're beginning to get themselves organised down on the grid for the Alfa Trophy final. The man on pole position is Dick Johnson, all the way down from sunny Queensland. I tell you what, he probably would have preferred to stay home today. Evan Green is about to talk with him.
Not too cold for you, Dick?
It's freezing down here, Evan. Absolutely freezing.
This is an important race for you because you can still win the series, and if that happens, you'll be Australia's representative at Monza on September the 10th in the Italian Grand Prix meeting. That's a pretty important incentive.
It sure is, Evan, but we've just got to make sure that we stay in front of Bondi, who's our main opposition. He's in front of us on points, so we'll just wait and see what happens after today.
You've got Alfie Costanzo alongside you and Joe Beninka behind, and Joe is in stunning form in his home track, isn't he?
His car's very, very quick, and I think we'll just have to try and shut him out somehow.
Is this a friendly category of racing, or is it deadly serious?
Oh, it's as friendly as far as we're concerned, but a few of the guys down the back get a bit serious, I think.
Okay, back to you, Gary. We've got to clear the line.
Yeah, well, it's about to get serious, so you better get out of the way. The 1 minute board has been up, and the cars are about to take off on a warm-up lap. At least I presume they'll get a warm-up lap.
I would imagine the same. We're starting with the lights as usual, yes.
Yes, off they go, warm-up lap. Dick Johnson in the blue car, the darker car on the left. Alfie Costanzo, as you can see, emblazoned in large letters across the top of the screen. Colin Bond going through with Joe Beninka. And the rest of the field tailing out thereafter. We'll check them again as they come around and grid up for the start of the race. On points, I think, as we mentioned, Colin Bond is the series leader. Well, as you heard Dick Johnson mention, Bondi on 23 points. Dick Johnson second place in the series at the moment on 17 points, and then in third and fourth positions equally, David Selden and Joe Beninka on 13 points apiece. positions on screen. Dick Johnson on pole, 57.4 practice time. Costanzo also on the front row, 57.5. Then Beninka and Bond on the second row, Longhurst and Edmondson on the third row, Selden and Murphy, Gulson and Cook, Latter and O'Neill, and Harrison on the rear of the grid. These cars identical, all Alfa suits, and it's been a great innovation this series and really has provided some great racing. Our last meeting at Amaroo Park in Sydney, we put the camera and the microphone in Dick Johnson's car, and when the flag dropped, we let him have his head, verbally as otherwise, and he really did give us quite a treat.
Alfa Costanzo will be out to show what he can do in this type of car, because when you've got the same car, it's all down to the driver, and he puts the power down, and side by side, Johnson and Costanzo go down, and Beninka and Bond right behind them. No car with any great advantage, and that's the way they're going to go into the first corner, I think almost side by side. Johnson, though, with the inside line will get the better of it. Alfie moves over, tries to nip on the inside. He must have watched Lucio Cesario before and thought, well, if he can do it, I can do it. Colin Bond squeezed out of it, and it's the aggressive young Joe Beninka who should probably come through in third place. He won the earlier heat. That's him in car number 10, really flying there, and you can see the yellow nose or the cream nose of his car poking round. That's Alfie Costanzo moving to the outside of Dick Johnson. But Dick leads the race, and he'll be first through Qantas. So it's Johnson, Costanzo, Beninka, Bond back in 5th place. Two of the outstanding finds of the series have been the young Joe Beninka from Victoria and Tony Longhurst from Queensland. Dick Johnson goes about as wide as you can go on the track and still be respectable. And the leading three have detached themselves. Tony Longhurst, it is, in 4th place, who's made a stunning start. Joe Beninka deciding the wide line is best. Alfie Costanzo weaving under brakes. Johnson goes through first. Costanzo very close behind. If anything happens to Dick Johnson's car, Alfie will learn very quickly.
Very precarious position for Colin Bond to be in back there in 5th. Longhurst up ahead of him, along with Costanzo and Beninka and Johnson.
Yes, Bond needs points. If he can get a lot of points in this race, he can almost start packing for Italy. Oh, and Alfie's gone sideways, but it controls it very well. Partly due to Alfie, partly due to the inherent stability of the Alfa Stuart. They are probably the easiest car in the world to drive quickly.
64.7 was the standing lap time, so you can see the difference between these and the real race cars.
Alfie already closed that gap, having had a bit of a lose. So one would imagine if Alfie can find a way through there, he might be a tough man to beat in this race.
Yes, well, we've got two of the amateurs up very close in that Beninka and Longhurst. Longhurst pulling out very, very wide. Colin Bond is right behind and had a good look at that. But what's he doing? Longhurst brakes heavily, comes in. He's going to go for a sweep beneath Beninka. He won't get through because that's where Beninka is. Colin Bond, in fact, says, OK, I'll go there instead. And squeezes a young Queenslander out wide on the track, and side by side they go down, sharing 4th place. It's Johnson from Costanzo, then Beninka, then Bond and Longhurst side by side, and Tony Emerson just behind.
Only 2.5 seconds covering the top 6 placings. That's how tight the racing is. The top half dozen cars, nose to tail.
Well, Dick's driving very defensively here, actually, and that's why those cars behind are actually really closing up. In fact, it's a mobile chicane at this stage.
Well, the whole series has given us some marvellous racing. Just gone a bit wide then, and he might lose a bit of ground. Longhurst went a little wide as well, but Dick is back, still in front.
2 divisions here on the inside and the outside. It's like the straight 6 at Flemington.
Colin Bond decides he would like to go to the outside instead, join Longhurst in the other group there, and he is the leader of that pack.
Longhurst has lost out badly, in fact, in that manoeuvre down the straight.
And Beninka is well placed there. As you can see, he's as a fresh challenge is applied to, oh goodness me.
Beninka trying to get through on Costanzo. Can't make it. Bond up to 4th. Only 2 seconds between the top 6.
He chewed up more grass than in the Victor Lawnmower. He went through on the inside, managed to hold it. They're both sweeping out for the fast run through Qantas corner, down towards DB. This is the tricky part of the track where the cars snake through one after the other. Dick goes right across from one side to the other. Alfie following him. Then Joe Beninka right on the tail. A young fellow, a motor engineer, learning his business. Colin Bond is teaching him a bit more now. Goes on the inside, says, thank you, give me a slight opening. I'm going to stay there. And Colin stays there and squeezes Beninka wide, but Beninka doesn't yield. He stays there, and Bond, though, is through. Although it'll only be a matter of a quarter of a car length, and side by side they come thundering down the straight. Beninka charging back again, but is Bond across the line by maybe no more than 50 centimetres in third place, and cars again fanning across the track. Johnson leads from Costanza, puffing smoke, flings the car sideways, would have lost a bit of ground but controls it. Marvellous car control there, and it is Bond in third place. Beninka very close behind and anxious to go faster.
And Colin being super defensive there, taking absolutely inside run.
Tony Longhurst now on the outside of Beninka, and there are a lot of cars there leaning on each other, very close together. Dick Johnson having a fairly charmed run in the front there. Alfa Costanza's behind him. But look at Beninka and Longhurst side by side in pursuit of Bond. It's Beninka who's in front of the Queenslander now.
They're the top two amateur drivers in the race.
And what great prospects they both are.
Yes, I was about to say, there's nothing amateur about this stuff. Not on their part, anyway. Mixing it with the best out there.
And that's Tony Edmondson in car one right behind them, the great Tasmanian driver. Close up behind, trying to get by these young amateurs. Doesn't like a man of his stature being behind them, but he needn't feel disgraced. There's nothing much between the lot of them. And Beninka and Longhurst have proved to be exceptional drivers during the length of this Alfa Sud series.
3 laps to go, going down into Valvoline. Dick Johnson still there. In the lead, Costanza second, Bond third, Beninka fourth, Longhurst fifth, Edmondson sixth.
Well, Beninka again has shown some great and aggressive driving. I like the way he went on the inside back there and put himself side by side with the driver, and the way he hung on when Colin Bond tried to get him. He is a driver of exceptional talent. We do have a special award here from Pi. They give about $1,000 worth of electronic gear, audio equipment to the outstanding amateur driver. I reckon Beninka's in front this time. The way he's hung on in some of those manoeuvres is outstanding, I think, particularly the way he hung on when Bond went on the inside, and he just hung on there and stayed there. Well, that takes a driver of exceptional talent.
Bond has got Costanza now and up into second place, and this is the big threat that Dick Johnson was talking about in terms of the overall series position. Coming down with 2 laps to go, still Johnson in front, but Bond right on his hammer now. Having been back in 5th place at one stage, Colin Bond.
Then Costanza, then Beninka still leading Longhurst, but only slightly. Longhurst comes in on the outside. They're almost touching those 2 cars. They must have a great deal of faith in each other. They're both making a mover now on Costanza. They're catching him, there's no doubt. Beninka just leading Longhurst. But it's Dick Johnson, the Queenslander, still in front. Colin Bond in second place.
Alfie's being engulfed, but it's Alfie's corner, I think. No.
Is Longhurst comes through. Beninka trying to do the same thing and being leaned on rather heavily there. That was a good manoeuvre by Longhurst. That really was a fine passing manoeuvre. To get the Australian Formula 1 driving champion under driving conditions is an exceptional move. He may be the leader for the Pi Award. We'll find out soon.
Coming down for the last lap board. It's out. 1 to go. Johnson, Bond, Longhurst. Costanza making another run back up on the inside of Longhurst. Beninka right behind them. Coming down into Valvoline corner. Johnson and Bond go through. The scrap for 3rd place is going to be interesting as they come out of this corner. We'll watch them go around. There's that right out wide. It looks like Longhurst. Costanza's back to 3rd. Beninka's up to 4th. Just.
Well, it means one thing, Gary, and that is that the final will be decided at Amaru Park next week, because the points will still be pretty close. Oh, Johnson hopping and leaping as he puts the wheels up on the curb there. Doesn't seem to affect the stability of the car.
Collins close up, though, and interesting to see the run onto the main straight here.
Yeah, Colin knows if he can win this race, he's going to be very, very hard to beat. Beninka's been ousted again by Tony Edmondson coming on the inside and trying to squeeze him out. So I've had enough of this. I'd like to get out there, and he puts Beninka very, very wide on the gravel. He's hanging on, though, and it'll be the Queenslander. Dick Johnson first from Colin Bond, a very close second. Across in 3rd place, Tony Longhurst, then Alfa Costanza, then it is Tony Edmondson and Joe Beninka, forced back in that last manoeuvre to come across the line in 6th place. So Dick Johnson very closely from Colin Bond, and Tony Longhurst, the leading amateur in the Alfa Trophy. We'll be back with results and a presentation after this break on 7 Sport from Calder Park in Melbourne. Welcome back to Calder Park, and the winner of the Alfa Romeo Trophy for Alfa Suds, the Queensland driver Dick Johnson in car 17. But there's a major award also, the Pi Award for the best amateur driver, and I give that this time to the young Queenslander Tony Longhurst for this passing manoeuvre. He came 3rd outright, but what's the way he goes through a man like Alfie Costanzo here. Now, Alfie is the Australian Formula 1 champion. Yet Longhurst in 56 makes this tremendous passing manoeuvre. Look at this on the outside. Has a bit of a moment, but holds on and comes through in the lead. Now, that takes some doing. Here's a driver of tremendous talent. Went on to come third. You can see how close there are. 3 cars there. You can only spot 2 at the moment. Good driving, though, isn't it, Peter?
Yes, that was excellent judgment, and he placed the car well. It's always a bit dicey doing that, but he judged it well. That was fine driving.
So the Pye Award then goes to Tony Longhurst, but the man who won the race is, of course, a much older and more experienced man, Dick Johnson. Young Tony pretty happy with himself there. 3rd place is a good result, adds up to his points. And in the meantime, let's go over to the garage area and the ages man, Chris de Fraga.
Yeah. Well, we've got John Briggs with us. John, if you remember, was the fellow who started halfway round the circuit when the flag dropped. Unfortunately for him, there'd been some strange instructions at the beginning of the race. What happened, John?
Well, actually, we're under starters' orders. Basically, that means that the fellow that's controlling the race, we have to do exactly as we're told. The directions were given to sort of come through. That's the way I interpret it, and so did quite a few of the other fellows, so it was rather confusing, but having spoken to the starter since, his explanation is that he wanted the cars at the rear of the field to stop doing their burnouts, so that's just a very, very strange set of circumstances there.
Indeed it is. Well, thank you very much for talking to us, John Briggs, and back to you, Gary. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, what a race. The Alfa Romeo Trophy race here at Calder Park this afternoon. And whilst it was a thriller, it just sets up the final round, which is going to be in Sydney next week, because the victory by Dick Johnson this afternoon resolved nothing except to narrow the gap between himself and Colin Bond, who remains the series leader. He's just in front of you, Dick, still.
Yeah, still, but we've still got 1 round to go at Amaroo. It should be an excellent race, actually. And then there's something I'd like to say about guys like Bondi when you race against them. You know damn well, even though there's something hanging on it at the end, that you're not going to get knocked off the road.
Well, there was some pretty good driving out there on the part of the amateurs today, too. Tony Longhurst and Joe Beninka, I noticed. They weren't far behind you and gave you, well, you were all right. You were in front, but I think Bondi can testify to the fact that they weren't giving way to him.
Yeah, but Bondi had somebody running shotgun for him. He had Costanzo there who was sort of holding them all out so he could catch me.
Enrico Zanarini is here from Alfa Romeo of Australia to make the presentations.
Thank you, Gary. Well, on behalf of Alfa Romeo Australia, we've done it before. Again, congratulations for a splendid victory.
Thank you very much, and I'd like to say a special thank you to John French for preparing the motor car, because he does a great job, and also Phil. Thank you very much.
And the top amateur in today's race, Tony Longhurst from Queensland.
Well, again, Tony, congratulations for a splendid victory.
Thanks very much, Enrico. I'd like to thank Philip for preparing the car, my sponsor Dreamworld, and Bruce Linden from the Gold Coast.
Okay, thanks a lot, guys. Stand by now for round 6 of the Formula Ford Series.
And the cars are on their warm-up lap now. This little galaxy of coloured ants you see heading towards you are the Formula Ford cars. There are 23 of them in the field. The fastest in practice yesterday was 42, Malcolm Osler. He'll take pole position in a Bowen P6, an Australian-made car, all of them with 1.6-litre Ford engines. And Mark Forrester on the front row. Sorry, yes, as Peter Brock is just pointing out, Mark Forrester, in fact, made pole position in car 29. Malcolm Osler will start alongside him on the front row of the grid. Forrester in 29 is running a PRS 83S. It's a yellow car. And there are plenty of colours in these cars as they come weaving down, warming up their tyres. They're all required to race on the same sort of tyre. But these cold conditions are persisting here, and getting some warmth into the rubber is still as important as it was at the beginning of the day. Ferocious racing in Formula Ford, particularly when you have so many cars. And this is a big field, 23. The distance of the race is 12 laps. They're now coming back towards the start line to be under starters' orders. Forrester brings his yellow car, which is adorned with the extraordinary slogan of bananas, fast food. There we are. Well, he's both fast and slippery. Yes, and he made pole position with a time yesterday of 49.79 seconds, which is almost half a second, or more than half a second faster than Osler. Alongside him is Osler. Then on the second row of the grid, car number 9, Connolly. Alongside him, 66, Angelo. On the next row, car 5, Walters. Car 53, Bennett. The next row, in 7th position, car 57, Day. 46, Randalls. Next row, car 68, Edmonds. 73, Jones. Car 63, Kay. 43, Grierson. The flag, well, the lights are about to go to green. 12 laps of distance. Away they go side by side, but it is Osler who makes slightly the better start. Forrester, though, ranging up alongside him on the inside, but Osler in 42, I think, will have just the legs to go first into the corner. Awesome late braking there as they come in. Connolly there locked up. He's gone sideways. He's in a dreadful position. There's a slight bump. He sent another car off. He and one other car have gone wide. Is it 5 or 15? 5. Walters has gone with him. He's back on the track, and Walters is coming back. 53 has gone off as well. That's Bennett. You can see parts of fiberglass from the cars that touch there. Well, in front, it's Osler, and car 9, Connolly, has come out of that in second spot, and very close behind, just swinging the tail as they come sweeping round through Glowweave. Let's see that first corner again. From the inside bend now, you can see a locking up of brakes on the outside was probably precipitated because you can see how the white car swings in, not quite out of control, but certainly in the wrong sort of line. Then it goes sideways. And the cars behind have a car to dodge. It's just happening a bit to... There's another bump. I didn't even spot that first time. There are bumps in the back as well. They're trying to dodge the car going wide just in front. There's a real T-bone going on there, as you can see. Well, a fairly eventful first lap. But still, it's Osler in front, Connolly hard behind, and there's some of the damage, as you can see. As cars are brought back into the pits. That's Bissett in car 27. The battery exposed. His feet getting extra cool, which wouldn't be a pleasant sensation on such a cold day. Nothing too fundamental, though, I don't think. Peter Brock.
Chill blades could be a problem here at Calder, I suppose, with that sort of air conditioning.
56.38 the standing lap time.
Oops, talking of standing, that's not the place to be standing in the corner. Goodness me, that was Ty. Glad to untie himself and get back on the track again. Sideways in the middle of a corner wouldn't be a pleasant position, Peter Brock.
No, I had a similar feeling a couple of weeks ago, actually. It wasn't the corner, but it was in front of a field bearing down on me, and it's not a pleasant feeling.
Did you ever find out what happened at the start of that race?
No, we didn't, but this car, number 14, is certainly in a lot of trouble there.
Well, it's Dave Roberts. He was involved in that huge mess up on the first corner.
I did think I could see some steam coming out of that earlier. That's steam.
Is it just steam? Because there was a trail or something. Hopefully it is just water and not oil.
Well, it is evaporating quickly. You can see it's as it's coming out, it's immediately dissipated.
Sure. But you can see something actually later on the track. Let's hope it was just hot water coming down.
Flying lap time for the race leader, Osler, is 50.74.
Connolly still close behind him. Connolly in the Galloway. Was entered in the Van Diemen, but running it back to Galloway. Cars weaving and jiggling under brakes as Connolly tries to close up on Osler there. Forrester, who was fastest in practice, so Mark Forrester, is back in third place. It's a battle between these two at the moment, Osler and Connolly, and they're both weaving and kinking around. That's Forrester in third place in the Bananas car.
Well, if he proves to be half as slippery.
Well, I think Forrester's greatest hope here is that the two fellas in front will slow themselves down a little, and he can finally get back on even terms.
That does happen in the scrap, does it? If two are together, they tend to go a little slower, more
the front driver,
about them.
Yes, the front driver tends to be a little bit defensive, and he doesn't take the absolute correct lines through the corner. Only to close any holes that may have been left there, and consequently fractions per second slower, and next thing you know, you've got someone else joining the fight.
Well, quite a scrap going on for the lead between these two, but it's still Osler in front of Connolly. Connolly comes in hard, and talking of coming into the pits comes number
Brad Jones
73.
And shakes his head as the pit crew says what's wrong. He's got no idea, but he's not going very much further.
Yes, he's getting out of the car, so that's the end of the race for him. Bad luck for Brad. Well, it's all line astern at the moment of this group of cars. One about to be lapped. 42 as a leader. That's Osler. Connolly still close behind. Interesting contrast in aerodynamics with the flat chisel nose of the leading car and the much more pointed nose of the second one. What sort of effect does it have on these types of cars, Peter Brock?
I don't think that this has a great effect at all, judging from the success or apparent lack of success from some cars that appear to be quite radical. Basically, this type of racing, you can't get much downforce, so therefore you need extra good penetration so that you're not losing speed down the straights.
Look at the leading car. You've got a great concentration of aerodynamics on the front, but once you get to the driver, they forget about it. The engine's out in the open, the suspension's out in the open.
Yeah, so I guess he's trying to get as much as he can. He's got his weight distribution through putting the radiator back beside the or behind the driver.
Well, now the radiators in the second car seem to be carried on the side. You can in fact look up and see them. You could almost brush the insects out of them. You can see the inlets there for air to go in the side, so he's carrying, I assume, the water radiators right in the side of the car there in those two pods.
Connolly looking for a way through there as they went into Valvoline. He went out, he came back in, couldn't get through, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him make a big try there on the next lap or two. They're coming around 6.5 laps to go for the leading division. And next time into Valvoline, I think we might see Connolly make a big try.
Interesting to note, though, that Osler is still driving down that back straight on absolutely the correct fastest line. He's using the full outside part of the track. So he must feel quite confident that he can hold out Connolly down the straights. Not Connolly, yes, Connolly.
Yeah.
Because they aren't really slowing down and letting Forrester catch up. They're still going at that same sort of quick clip.
Into Valvoline again, but still no chance for Connolly.
And again, at the end of that corner, at the end of the main straight, he's using the correct line.
The order then is Osler, Connolly, Forrester, Day, Grierson and Randall. Those are the top six, but this is the battle for the lead, and it seems, I think, apparent that Forrester is closing up. He went very wide on that first corner and lost a lot of ground, but has recovered very well. He's still running third, but he is sneaking up. You can see they're going very hard. This is Forrester in the PRS.
Dickie Johnson's mate.
Once tempted to say that he's trying to bunch up.
Yeah, when will he stop?
Well, it's still a banana season.
He's driving a little bit ragged there. He's getting a little bit keen on joining the fight in front, and that's the quickest way to fall back in this class of racing, is to be anything but absolutely ultra smooth.
Greg Kentwell just being lapped there.
You can see the gap already. That little mistake back there probably cost him 4 or 5 car lengths.
But he's still through in third place.
He's now driving defensively up the straight.
Right.
As you can see, he's now decided that this fella's about to attack.
Well, he made an attack on the outside, which is a very difficult line there, but he is showing that he does show some inclination to go deeper in braking. A lot will depend on the way they come through this bend, the way they come out through Glow Weave, because this is probably the most crucial corner on the circuit. You come out of here fast, and you're fast on the straight. And Connolly had a quick line through there. He dropped back a little bit, but came through very fast. Now, will he gain a little extra momentum? He's right up, closing on the tail now of Osler. You can see the gap as they go through, maybe, what, 2 lengths, 3 lengths, if that. Brakes a little later, tries a slightly wider line, which he's weaving a bit under brakes, but if he can just persist with that line, he may come through on a slightly better.
He's got a better exit, a nicer exit.
So there's more to just motor racing, Peter Brock, than putting your foot down and going quickly.
Oh, my word, yes. You can see there that certainly Osler was a little bit wide on the exit. That made all that difference.
Mark Day, the 4th place man in the Ren, a car we haven't seen before, a totally different shape to the others. More of an old-fashioned looking car, but he's running there in 4th place at the moment. He's 3.6 seconds behind the leaders. And here are the leaders. Osler just in front of Connolly, and very close now is Forrester. He really is almost up in that group. 3 laps to go as they cross the start-finish line. And those 3, the leading division, have pulled right away.
I was going to mention it, that particular car we had before. You mentioned this body style is a little old-fashioned and different. It really looked to me as if you had a Formula Skoda, that'd be Formula Skoda.
There is such a thing.
Well, that's probably the prototype.
I see, yes. Well, Forrester now is almost within challenging distance. He has enough time to catch up. You can see that Osler's being hustled a little bit. A car in front just being lapped, car 14 with David Roberts.
Forrester has closed right up, hasn't he, during this little scrap?
Well, they shouldn't forget that he was more than half a second faster in practice, so he has the form to suggest if he gets within range, he can pass him. And Connolly trying desperately hard to get by now. You can see how close the yellow car is. That's Forrester. Has made up a lot of ground. But the real challenge still among these leading pair, and Connolly now better placed he's ever been. There he goes on the outside. Oops. Not so well placed is Terry Angelo, who has a bit of a spin in the hawk. Now here's a chance for a pass because he's making a move on the inside for sure. Yes, there he goes. And he's through, Connolly through. Now, let's see whether he's being held up or not, or whether in fact Osler can catch him. And Forrester right behind. He and Osler moving to the outside line. Connolly stays on the inside though.
Well, they'll only have one lap to go when they get round here.
Nigel Greenway, our lap man, just pointing out with his meticulous attention to detail, Peter Brock, that there is a Formula skater. Oh, there's a touch. They've bumped, and he's skewered him. Forrester then has just put the nose of his car into the side of Osler. Osler's lost ground. Forrester's gone through.
Just one lap to go.
Here's the checkered flag.
The checkered flag's out. Oh, I see.
Well, Connolly got the checkered flag. Osler got the car in the side. And Forrester got second place.
The great
and we got confused.
Yes, the great signalling tower said one lap to go, but the man with the checkered flag counts differently.
Well, maybe that was a good thing for Connolly. Osler will be not at all happy. The car doesn't seem to be damaged by that coming together, certainly not on that side. Here's the man who won the race, though, and acknowledging the cheers of the marshals and the officials on the far side of the circuit.
With the checkered flag coming when it did, I guess Forrester would have hung on for third. He wouldn't have been passed after that little...
Yes, Forrester certainly came third.
Yeah. I see. All right.
Well,
no, that's not right. No, I think he's got second.
I think he would have come second because he did put Osler off, and Osler may have recovered to come third. Although, who was close behind Day? Day was up very close. Let's watch again. Now, you'll just see how there was a slide here. A touch or a slide. He's moving on the inside. Let's just see. There, the wheel touched. There you can see what caused it coming together. So there was a crunching of wheels. Not a great deal of damage to either car. In fact, Forrester got out of it very well. And look at the quick recovery by Osler into low gear immediately. He hadn't really got over the impact, and he's thinking what he should do next, which is a sign of a thinking driver.
Now, in all that confusion there was no confusion about the winner. Bruce Connolly certainly took the checkered flag first. Second placing does go, in fact, to Mark Forrester, although Malcolm Osler may have something to say about that. Osler, in fact, got squeezed out of third spot across the line. Mark Day took third. So the placings as they stand, Bruce Connolly first in car number 9, the Van Diemen. Second placing, Mark Forrester in car number 29. Third goes to Mark Day driving a Wren, and fourth place to the man who led for most of the early laps, Malcolm Osler in a Bowen. There they are on screen. Car 74 finishing in 5th place, and car 30 finishing 6th, Ron Barnacle. So that's the 6th round of the Formula Ford Driver to Europe Series completed here at Calder Raceway this afternoon. We'll be going down to the grid area very shortly to Evan Green to talk to the winner, but let's take this break first.
Back at Calder, and Bruce Connolly, a small trophy for a big effort. Congratulations on the win. It was pretty hectic out there.
It was, yeah. It was a good run with Malcolm Osler for most of the race. He's got a few more horsepower than me, but I just had to get close to his tail coming down the straight, pull out of the bottom of the corner because he was going wide, making a couple of mistakes, and that's where I got him.
Did you always think you could win?
Yes, yeah. I was holding back a little bit at the end of the straight, hoping that that would be the last lap move.
Did you see what happened behind you back there towards the end of the race?
I did see Malcolm spinning, and that slows him down enough, so I knew I was clear then.
Well, a cool victory to Bruce Connolly then. Congratulations.
Thanks very much. Can I just take this chance to thank Alan Brown from Recar. We put a little bit of shifting on at the start of the race. We heated the tyres up because it's so cold here at Calder. No temperature on the tyres for the first few laps. It's quite deadly, so we put our tyres in his sauna in his bus and got a bit of heat in them. This wraps up the series for me, actually, and I'd like to thank Wally Story from Moore Engineering in particular, Stu Wiesner for the engines, North Shore Brakes and Custom Clutches. A great effort by everyone.
And a great effort by Bruce Connolly. And now for 7 viewers, it's over to Christopher Fraga, who has with him the man who won the Alfa Sud race.
Thank you, Evan. Dick Johnson, you won the Alfa Sud race, but you're normally a Ford driver. Can you see Ford going in for that sort of racing with EFI Falcons?
Chris, I think many manufacturers would like to get into that sort of racing, and there are a few Fords running. There's a few Falcons out there at the moment, and I'm sure that if the guys spend the time at them, that they will be a winning type motor car, because they are racing against the other sports cars, of course.
You'll be racing your car shortly. You've had some problems getting tyres. What's the situation at the moment?
Well, we won't have tyres, unfortunately, for Amaru, which is a bit of a sad state of affairs, but it has given us the opportunity to give the car a complete and utter birthday, which it hasn't had since it was built. So we're currently doing that, and we should be running at Oran Park.
Dick Johnson, thank you very much, and it's back to you, Gary.
Okay, Chris, well, cars are coming out onto the track for our next event, but we'll take this opportunity for another break and return with more racing at Calder.
Welcome back to Calder Park, or Melbourne International Raceway as it's now known, and it's the main race in the GT series here, the Humes Guardrail Cup, 25 laps, the 1983 Australian GT Championship round 4. This is the second part as we watch cars still being removed from the circuit after the Formula Ford race, and this together, or again rather, will bring together cars like the big Porsche of Rusty French, the 935 that won the first round, and Tony Edmondson, the Alfa Romeo, alongside him. A big event for Rusty, as for Tony, returning to this category of racing for the first time since last year. 2
warm-up laps, by the way, here. And we should also tell you that John Briggs was deemed to have finished in 6th place in the first heat.
That's his car with Briggs across the windscreen on the right-hand side of your screen, the black BMW Turbo.
He's the man that jumped the start by almost a full lap.
So they said. If he'd only known, he could have kept on going and got his money's worth. Colin Bond's alongside him, the white Porsche with the red bar across, second from the left on your screens. They'll have 2 warm-up laps. Well, it's a category of motor racing for which our fellow commentator today, Gary, Peter Brock, is not participating because you haven't got a car, Peter. And you lost your car in fairly spectacular circumstances at Adelaide just a week ago. As these cars go on the warm-up lap, we might just recall what happened in Adelaide. You were in the Chevy Monza, and you had Rusty French alongside you, and here you are. And that's you in the... Now, did you get nudged by the car behind?
Yes, I did get nudged, but Alan Brown was car forward, but whether that was enough, because the car just absolutely went berserk, as you can see. It didn't just sort of slew, it just turned right angles and started across there. And then, of course, all hell broke loose.
Watch it again. Now, you've got Alan Brown behind you. He's a car, the Porsche 4. Now, you seem to move suddenly. Bang.
Yes.
He
just touched it that way.
And away you go. And now you're in front of Jim Richards in the black BMW.
Now, Jim was looking pretty good. Jim was actually...
destroyed.
He got a belt there from Tony Hubbard in the Falcon.
That's an XJS Jaguar going through.
Yes.
Carrying a Falcon on its
back.
Falcon
and hit the BMW. Now, it was that was a fairly spectacular shunt. In fact, it was shown in America. I was across there last week, and they'd said they'd seen it on cable TV over there. So my exploits had preceded me. I was over there to drive another Chevy Monza, and they said, not another one.
Do it again?
Yes. Rusty French, who escaped that carnage, won the rerun of that race, and he now is in a very comfortable position in the Australian GT Championship. He's starting on the front row of the grid. Car number 3, the almost psychedelic John Sands Porsche, number 3, and alongside him in pole position, making a return to this category of racing, Tony Edmondson in the V8 Alfa.
25 laps.
On the second row of the grid, Colin Bond in the Porsche 944, number 28, and partly obscured by the start sign is John Briggs in the turbocharged BMW. Alan Brown in car 4. 17 is Brian Thompson in the turbocharged Mercedes. And away they go. The green light is on. And it's the Porsche still doing the better from the start. French on the outside, may just sweep inside, but under brakes it's Edmondson who goes through. And French has to give way. Colin Bond has made a very good start. Bond is up there in 3rd place, but it's Edmondson in front, and now French has himself a job to try and catch him. We'll see how the speed of the Porsche can combat the superior handling of the little Alfa. Let's watch them. Alan Brown, well placed as well, right up there in 4th place.
Start. Edmondson, French.
Well, that's the good part of the circuit over as far as Edmondson's concerned. Now, can the big Porsche catch him? Let's watch as the power goes on, and they
French is coming in. French is coming into the pits.
He has troubles. He has troubles. Well, what bad luck for the man who leads the series into the pits at the start.
Well, perhaps it's turbo trouble again. He had it in practice yesterday. Hurried repairs this morning. He got through the first heat without any problem. but maybe the strain on the car in doing so was just a little too much. We'll find out. Evan Green is on his way there. Meantime, Tony Edmondson has pulled out to a commanding lead at this stage early on in this second and deciding heat of round 4 for the Humes Guardrail Cup, the Australian GT Championship. Standing lap time 48.75.
I think that it must be a flat tyre or something like that with French's car, because he was seemed to be going quite all right, and then he just dived for the pits.
Edmondson in front now. Colin Bond is in second place. Alan Brown is in third spot. And Brian Thompson in fourth place at the present time. Oh, he was in fourth. I think Briggs might have got past him through the back of the circuit, through Valvoline Corner. I'm sure he has. Edmondson the leader. Now, whatever the problem was, it's been fixed in double quick time. French is back on the circuit, but he's lost a lot of time.
Trouble. You can see a little bit of grass there falling off the front spoiler.
A little bit.
Yes, a little bit. The shrubbery. But there was a lot of dirt, etc. on the circuit there after that last race. We can see the cars, rescue vehicles, have been pulling some of those other cars back onto the track. And mud, cold tyres, and a cold track makes it pretty difficult these early laps until you get a groove. Is apparent after a few laps.
Tony Edmondson's pulled out the 3.5-second lead over Colin Bond in second place. Let's go to Evan Green and find out what was going on downstairs.
I'm in the pits with Ken Rouse, who's the mechanic in Rusty French pit. What was the problem, Ken?
A bit of the front end was a bit loose, and we're just checking the wheel nuts.
Are you going to come in again?
No, he'll be right.
He'll be right. Can he catch up?
I doubt it. Anyway, no, I don't think I'll have much of a chance here now.
Must be a bit of blow when he had such a good chance in the championship.
Yeah, that's right. Well, try motor racing.
Okay, back to you, Gary, up at the top now.
Yes, you can't give away a lap in this class of racing. Edmondson going through. Commanding leader, Bond, second place. Briggs is up to third. Be interesting to see, in fact, what Briggs can do, because they've still got 20 laps to go, and you'll recall that whilst he was technically in front after jumping the start by a lap in Heat 1, he made up a lot of ground on the cars that were in front of him on the track. And from third spot here, as the race unfolds, he might be in a position towards the finish to mount some pressure on Bond and perhaps even on the race leader, Tony Edmondson.
It'll be interesting to see how he goes with Bondi, actually, because I think Edmondson now, this race, is going, it appears to me, a little better than what he was the previous race, because he's pulling away from Colin quite easily. But Briggs could be another matter, really. He's his car is capable, I should say, of beating Colin Bond's. Everything going okay. And the other interesting aspect, of course, is that we do have Rusty French only a matter of a few hundred metres ahead of Tony Edmondson. So we gauge also the speed which both of those are travelling at.
There are wide spaces between the top 5 cars now. Edmondson in front, second place. Colin Bond, there he is on screen in the Porsche 944. Briggs in the BMW is in third spot, followed by Thompson in fourth, Fitzgerald in the Porsche in fifth place. Race leader, Tony Edmondson. Goes by our commentary position and down into Valvoline corner. Makes the right-hander into the back straight once more. And that was Fitzgerald, not Fitzgerald, rather Rusty French that you saw go through in car number 3. Not too far ahead of Edmondson. On the track, that is, not in terms of his placing in the race. Alan Brown pulls over. French goes through. And lurking right behind them, and in fact a lap in front of them, Tony Edmondson.
Well, French only has a lap to make up to be ahead of his teammate. What's it like, Peter Brock, in a long race like this, when you know you've got to make up a lap? Can you do it? Do you feel a sense of desperation?
I think it's excellent myself. it gives you really something to aim for, and it's one of the reasons why I drive my pit crew crazy. I always ask them for lap times, every lap. I want gaps, I want the information so that I can pace myself, and there's nothing better for a race driver than to look at a gap and say, I've just taken 1.2 seconds off my opposition on that lap, and to do a quick calculation, multiply that by 20 or 30 and figure out if you can get there, and it's I find it very enjoyable. The laps just absolutely speed by.
Well, I would reckon at the moment that Rusty French will be saying, all right, it's unrealistic to expect that I can beat this fellow, Tony Edmonton, but maybe I can get up to second or third place.
Yes, give it your best shot. That's about it. You say, right, we'll wonder where I can finish. I reckon I can catch Briggs or something like that, perhaps Colin Bond. But that would be highly doubtful. You'd have to hope there was some sort of attrition to put you back at the points.
But he needs points, and even a fourth place will give him enough to put his lead in the Australian GT Championship into a fairly healthy situation. So you want points at the moment. But a man as proud as Rusty French will be hoping surely for the highest placing he possibly can, and he won't want to be lapped by this fellow.
No, I'd say that what he wants to do now is to try and pull out 10 or 15 seconds on Tony Edmonton, just to prove to everyone that had he not had a miscue earlier, that he had the fastest car here today. It appeared as if they were tightening up the front wheel nut to me. I thought they were going to change the tyre watching the pit action, but maybe it's one of those big centre locking nuts that was loose.
You really are dependent on your pit crew to make sure that everything is back in place, aren't you?
My word.
Brian Thompson there in fourth place.
One of the most interesting cars on the circuit, Gary, the twin turbocharged Mercedes-Benz. We don't see many Mercedes racing on the track, but this Wangaratta developed car, Cheviot rather, is here. Well, same region roughly. The people of Cheviot will love that, won't they? Yeah. Robin Doherty, who was up in 6th place, bringing his Tirana into the pits. Bad luck for him. Doing very well for a driver of a car of this calibre up against some much more specialised vehicles, coming in very slowly. Yes, the man from Shepparton, let's put it correctly, with the Mercedes now sporting 2 turbochargers. Not your average Mercedes,
Not your average Mercedes, no, and a very finely finished motor car, that particular example. It's the aluminium's beautifully polished and everything fits just so. But I believe they've given themselves a tremendous development headache to sort out not only a car with new suspension and driveline configuration, but then to give themselves the added problem of twin turbos.
Well, talking of problems, it seems to me that French has the problem of trying to keep in front of Edmonton, not to make up ground, but to stop him from catching him, because there's no doubt Edmonton is hauling him in little by little. You can see the margin there. It certainly has diminished, and while there may be a lap apart, it's a pretty good motor race going on between these two proud drivers at the moment. Edmonton would love to lap his rival, not to rub his nose in the dirt, but just to give him that extra margin in case something goes wrong with his car towards the end of the race. It can happen. He may have to slow down. You never know in motor racing.
It's interesting to watch these two cars. If we look at them from front on out of this next corner, out of the end of the main straight, the weight distribution of the Porsche is tremendous, and you'll notice a huge gap underneath the front spoiler. You can see it there, compared to the Alfa, which of course is a more balanced car.
You can see the gear changes by when the nose bobs down.
That's right. Watching through this very next corner now, we'll watch it through out of here, as he hits the power momentarily, the gap, then down again. Whereas the Alfetta doesn't do that because it's inherently slightly better balance. And that was one of the things that Alan Jones would complain about at various times. On full noise through a long, fast corner, the front became very light, as you can see there, under power, and the car would understeer, in fact, at about 140, 150 mile per hour, going through those long corners.
Which is not nice feeling.
Well, he used to say it was fairly scary, and often from where I sat right behind him in Bob Jones' Chevy Monza, I could understand what he was talking about.
Well, you can pick the gear changes under the tremendous torque of acceleration. See the nose lifting up when he changes gear down, it goes up, it comes again.
It's a tremendous amount of suspension travel for a car of that type.
What sort of power would it be developing, do you think?
It's around about the 650 to 700. On full boost, it's around about, I believe it's 740 horsepower on full boost. And Rusty usually likes to run the boost up a fair bit.
10 laps to go, and they pass the start-finish line, or when Tony Edmonton passes the start-finish line here. 11 laps, in fact, for the car in front of him, and that's Rusty French.
A puff of smoke, by the way, from the back of the car then, not just the flame, which is quite typical of a turbocharged car, but that's a bit ominous because he has had trouble in practice. There's Fitzgerald.
He's in 5th position at the present time.
Something came flying from a car right in front of their position here on the main straight, just lying on near the start-finish line. I
hope it's not solid.
Well, here's another sort of Porsche, not the, there's a bit just being released by a fairly brave marshal here. Not only brave, but fast. John Lusty, Peter Fitzgerald in 5th place.
Well, there are no brave, slow marshals.
None of them left.
Edmondson leading. Colin Bond we haven't seen for a little while because we've been concentrating on Edmondson and French. He's in 2nd place, Bondi. John Briggs in 3rd place, Brian Thompson 4th, and the man you're seeing at the moment, Fitzgerald, in 5th place.
And Briggs is now approximately 3 seconds behind Colin Bond. He's catching him. And I would say we'll see a challenge there. Give us the next 4 or 5 laps, we'll see Briggs, I think, challenging Colin Bond.
Something hanging loose off the left rear of Bondi's car, is it? What is that?
Is there some liquid coming out?
Well, there seems to be no rear quarter panel. It's been jettisoned, I suppose.
That might have been what we found on
re-entry. I would say so, yes.
Jettisoned on re-entry, is that the thing?
And at number 26 is Clem Smith from South Australia in the charger. But yes, from the inside we can't spot it, but the fairing over the rear wheel has gone, and with it what appears to be the overflow pipe. You can just see the end there spraying excess fuel, I suppose.
Well, no, that's an oil breather pipe.
Oh, right.
I would suggest that now we've got Briggs going past very slowly too as I talk about this, and Briggs' challenge has ended, I would say.
Yes, well, it might be good news then for
C. Bond, yes, because that it could be maybe just a breather. I'm not too sure what Alan Hamilton had stuck inside those fender flares, the man from Porsche. He may have had some sort of oil cooling device, but surely be pumping out oil. There's no oil coming out there, it's only fumes. Because these cars have a dry sump system, and pumps extract the oil, engine oil, and the fumes. No, there's something amiss there because Colin's now having a bit of an oversteer problem, I reckon.
He's touched something, I think, which probably has done some other damage. It gives you an idea of the width of the tyre. Once it is as naked as that, you can see just how broad are those rear tyres applying power there. Well, Colin Bond struggling on to hold his 2nd spot. Briggs was in 3rd, Thompson 4th, Fitzgerald 5th, and Smith was in 6th place.
It's Briggs over on the left of screen too, making his way very slowly and down the straight into the corner, is about to be passed, in fact, by Edmondson. No, I don't know what's happened to Briggs, but whilst he's still circulating, he's travelling very slowly indeed. So it's Edmondson, still the leader. There he is. Colin Bond in 2nd place. Briggs, I don't think he'll be holding 3rd for much longer. Brian Thompson must be hot on his heels. And then Peter Fitzgerald.
I'm just watching up at the end of the straight at Valvoline corner, Clem Smith's charger going through with a mark on the inside of the guard, which suggests he might be the one who made contact with Colin Bond. It seems to be a sympathetic sort of dent in the back of his charger, so maybe those 2 cars came together. Certainly, each of those cars has made contact with something else. Well, the BMW Turbo is still going reasonably quickly by the standards of ordinary traffic.
Briggs coming into the pits.
He's stopped now. He's right up, and Briggs' race is run. What a shame. Had a disappointing first heat when he mistook the signal of the marshal and tried to complete another lap and was penalised a minute for that. And now he is almost certainly out of the race, certainly out of the points as far as the final of the Humes Guardrail Cup for GT cars is concerned. There's the man, though, still well and truly in contention. Edmondson with a 9-second lead over Colin Bond now. Less than 5 laps to go.
Yes, 4 laps now as Edmondson crosses the start-finish line, and in fact laps Peter Fitzgerald in the Porsche. So it's only the top 3 cars on the leading lap: Edmondson, Bond, and Thompson.
A beautifully prepared car. Did you have a chance to examine it, Peter Brock, the new Alfa? It really is a beautifully made machine.
Yes, and you notice the sign Alfa Sports Cars there, and it's great to see that Tony's long-time mentor, Don Elliott, has in fact bought that concern, that Adelaide concern, and that car, I believe, owes a lot to Alfa Sports Cars engineering. I don't quite know how much, but it's certainly a superbly presented motor car.
The electronic lap scorer, I think, has skipped another lap. It says 4 to go, and I'm pretty certain it's only 3.
We'll keep our eye both on the lap scorer, the electronic one, and the man with the flag. Hopefully they're keeping their own independent count. Tony Edmondson will be getting signals from the pits. He's now closing up once more on Rusty French. to still maintain that little gap between himself to prevent himself being lapped. Trying desperately to get up on the leaderboard so he can just get a few points. Peter Fitzgerald swinging the tail wide of his Porsche 930.
Well, Rusty French is currently in 7th positioning, and he's closing fast. And his remaining handful of laps here, he just might get himself into the points.
Could be 2 laps to go or 3, depending on whose scoring system is right. Colin Bond crosses the start-finish line as we see Edmondson going through the back part of the circuit.
See how far back in the car Edmonton's sitting. He's behind the door line of the car. The engine is almost mid-mounted in the machine. It's a Chevrolet V8. A full racing machine, taking advantage of the regulations allowed under Australia Sports Sedan and GT regulations. Puffs of smoke from both sides of the car. Look like skirts on the side there just to maintain a proper airflow beneath the vehicle.
Yes. Yeah, that's the latest trick. The skirts, you'll notice that Rusty French car has them, Bob Jane's car has them, and this car has been added on since the car's rebuilt.
Edmondson is a full half lap, and they're on their last lap. In fact, he's a full half lap in front of second place getter Colin Bond. Brian Thompson is in 3rd place.
And the starter or the finish marshal has the checkered flag in his hand.
Checkered flag is out, so the tower is wrong once again. We were right. There it goes. Edmondson is the winner. The Humes Guardrail Cup, round 4 of the Australian GT Championship. An easy winner by, as I said, a half lap from Colin Bond, who's only just now coming around Glowweave into the main straight.
And that gives Rusty French just a little bit longer to try and pick up occasional cars if he can to get up in those top 6 and score some points. So let's see how he makes off. He was in 7th place, so he only had 1 more car to pick off. Had he been lapped, he would have lost that opportunity, of course. Flag is out.
He's got to catch Clem Smith, car number 26. And he won't get him. He's missed out here by about 100 metres.
That's it. Smith crosses the line, and Rusty French, despite a brave effort, he passes him now. You can see him there just pulling on the inside of Smith. But that gap was enough to deny any points to Rusty French, the leader of the Australian GT Series.
Well, there may be points combining the first race in this one. One would imagine he should get some reward for the day's effort.
Well, no doubt about the return to this category racing by Tony Edmondson. A victor today in commanding fashion from Colin Bond in the Porsche and Brian Thompson in the Mercedes. How's that for a trio of classical European cars? Alfa Romeo, Porsche and Mercedes, the winners of this heat of the Humes Guardrail Cup for the Australian GT Championship. We'll be talking to the winners when we return to the action here at Calder Park, Melbourne. Welcome back to Calder, where cars are now coming back on the track for the start of the final of the Cheviot Trophy for Australian National Formula 1 and 2 cars, and John Smith already in strife out on the circuit. In the meantime, let's go over now to Gary Wilkinson for the presentation of prizes for the previous race.
Well, here we are after the running of the Humes Guardrail Cup round 4 of the Australian GT Championship, and the return to the track of Tony Edmondson in the Chevy-powered Alfa. And where is he? Tony, congratulations.
Thank you.
What a great first outing for the car.
Yeah, it is. It's very pleasurable. The car started off with a fairly bad demise at Sandown earlier in the year, and it's great to come back. It's been a long time between drinks up here.
Mr. Ian Young is here, State Manager for Humes Guardrail. Ian, would you like to come in? I think a very well-deserved trophy on the day for Tony Edmondson. There's no doubt about that.
Definitely. Congratulations, Tony, on a very wonderful race. You must have got a real thrill, particularly after your close go in the first event, where we were just nosed out by about half a second. It was a really great race, and we'd like to congratulate you on behalf of Humes. And would you please accept the Humes Guardrail Cup on our behalf?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ian, and I'm sure that I must thank Humes at this stage for their continued support of motor racing at Calder, and I hope that it continues into the future. It's great to see a company like Humes behind motorsport, and I wish to God that there were a few more that would follow in their footsteps. I would like to thank at this stage, if I might, my sponsor and patron, Don Elliott, without his backing and support, the car wouldn't be here. Thanks very much, Don.
Thanks very much, Tony. Colin Bond. Well, second and a third placing today in the Humes Guardrail event. You did a lot of chasing.
Well, we did actually, and I must say that the car went extremely well. It's very standard compared to these other modified cars around us, but really it's a nice motor car to drive, and I really enjoyed driving it. And I was, you know, enthusiastic when Alan said, "Why don't you drive it?" Seeing you coming down here to run the Alfa as well. I'd just like to thank Alan Hamilton for the car, and also could I thank Frank Crott Motors and Frank Crott for the Alfa, seeing they would let me say anything about it last time.
Thanks, Bondy. If there was a hard luck story, it certainly belongs today to Rusty French, I think.
Thank you. I'd really like to thank my crew. They worked all night last night to rebuild the engine in that car, and then in the warm-up this morning we did a turbo, and unfortunately in that session there I felt as though one of the wheels was not correctly tight, and I had to pit for it, and that put me back a bit. But I'd like to thank Porsche Cars Australia for making their workshop available last night with Eddie and Terry, and I'd like to thank Ken Rouse and all my guys for working their ass out all night to get the car here today. I'd also like to thank my sponsors, John Sands, for making the car available and the money available to keep it running. Thank you.
Rusty, thank you very much. Congratulations again to Tony Edmondson. Thank you very much to Mr. Ian Young, State Manager for Humes Guardrail. We take you back now to Evan Green.
Thank you, Gary, and the cars are on the grid now for the 15-lap final of the Cheviot Trophy for Australian National Formula 1 and Formula 2 cars. They're just warming up, despite the snarl of the sound. That's not the start of the race yet. 27, Alan Grice at the wheel of the Bree car RT4. Alan Brown had a go in the previous event. Now it's Alan Grice's turn, and if you're a follower of touring cars...
Well, motor racing in general, because Gricey's had a go at everything in Australia over the years, and he started life driving this type of car, Evan, and moved on to tourers in GT cars and tourers, and now tourers, and back the circle has turned over probably the last 10 or 15 years.
This is the way they practice with Alfie Costanzo, the leader of the point score and the holder of the title for the last 3 years on pole position with a time of 40.51. As you can see, 2/10 faster than John Smith. I wonder if Lucio Cesario will be back there for the start where they managed to repair his car. Yes, they have. That's him in 16, just sweeping through there now. No more than damage to the front wings we thought in the previous incident, which put him into the fence. He will drive a little bit more cautious.
Oops, he's off the road again.
Oh dear, what was I saying?
He's hit the fence.
Maybe not too much damage, but the crew will certainly have to look at it. It's going through water now, and he may do some damage there.
Well, hopefully he can just quietly get back on there, get around for a quick look in the pits. And he's back wheeled, hit the Armco there, and well, it doesn't seem to be pointing in the right direction. I can't work out what's happening there. It looks as if it might be knocked. Yes, it is. It's badly knocked in.
You can see it is knocked in there. Here he goes.
There's absolutely no excuse for this.
Well, this is a warm-up lap. Watch him. He goes wide here with cold tyres out onto the side, and there's mud out there, water in the grass. Hits the fence, and this is what does the damage. Fairly fragile around the suspension of these cars. They don't like being hit like that, and the car is bent in, and he will have a disappointed pit crew. Certainly he will not now take part in the race. If in fact he can get round to the pits, he's sneaking around to try and get into the pit area. His crew walking up to meet him, but he certainly won't take part in the race.
Well, the only thing that may have occurred there, and is it may be something let go as he exited the corner. So we'll give him the benefit there of...
sure, well, he did do damage before. That's right, I couldn't see any reason for him going off there. He didn't seem to go that hard. Anyhow, the red light is on, waiting for the green on the start. And it's away, and John Smith in 71 makes a better start, but Alfie Costanzo moving up on the inside. Peter McCrow in the green car made a good start. He'll be in third place. And it's Smith in the lead from Costanzo. Then it's McCrow. Then Alan Grice, who made a blinder of a run to come up through into fourth position. There's Alan Grice there, fourth place. That's not a bad start, seeing he started so far back on the grid. And it's John Smith leading from Alfa Costanzo. Then Peter McCrow in third spot. Well, Smith is racing away. And racing off the track in car number 8, Clive Millis, who did so well in the previous event, but that looks like his race is run. He's out wide. And as they cross the line for the first of 15 laps, it's John Smith by a margin of 50 metres over Alfie Costanzo. Peter McCrow making the move on Costanzo in third spot, and the field already strung out right down as they go through for this, the final of the Cheviot Trophy for Australian National Formula 1 and Formula 2 cars. Crow in the Australian-made Cheetah. Right behind him, Alan Grice going very hard and very well, Peter Brock.
Yes, my word. Oh, yes, Grice is really, particularly his early laps there, he knows how to start a race quickly, make no bones about that.
Is there a more aggressive driver in Australia?
Depends. I mean, no, I don't. No, not really. I think that Moffat can be. Certainly Moffat can be. When he gets a bit between his teeth, he's an extremely aggressive driver. But Grice, he's probably the most aggressive, yes.
How does he show his aggression on the track?
Well, he just charges into corners very, very hard indeed. You know, you see him coming in there teetering. He has put in some very, very good controlled drives, I think, over recent years. But has been known to lock horns with people at times, have some spectacular shunts.
Well,
he just decides, this is my corner, and if there's another car there, it's unfortunate.
Lucio Cesario now having a conversation with other members of his pit crew.
Rather heated a moment ago.
Yeah, be a very disappointed young fella. We don't know what the cause was. It may have been something breaking, as Peter Brock was suggesting. Certainly a most disappointing afternoon for him, a man of such immense talent. Let's hope he can get it all together, because we can't afford to lose drivers who are as naturally quick as Lucio Cesario. Here's a fellow who's naturally quick too, and making a very rare appearance in single-seater racing, Alan Grice, in his patron's car. Alan Brown owns the car, and he's let Alan Grice drive before him, and he's in pursuit of Peter McCrow. They're battling at the moment for third place. The race still being led by John Smith from Alfa Costanzo.
It's not bad when you consider that Grice probably hasn't driven one of these things for since the 60s.
How different are they from a touring car?
Well, a different feel, because the car does exactly what you want it to do, and it's very hard to judge the limits of the car. Whereas a touring car, you've got to extract the most out of a car which wasn't designed to do that job. So they're entirely different in that respect. But I should point out one thing. Lines through corners, smoothness, technique are the same whatever you drive. Forget about this business of saying he's an open-wheel driver or a touring car driver or whatever. You go overseas and watch any of these Formula 1 drivers that are any good, they can hop into a tour and go just as good in a tour as they can on an open-wheeler.
Neat is quick.
Neat is quick, yeah. The hardest thing with these cars, as I mentioned, is the feel. They are so good, you can't just judge just what they're about to do at any particular time.
Is there any difference in the actual position you sit in the car? I mean, you don't see a great deal of the car in front. The front wheels are alongside your ankles. Does that affect the way you can steer the car?
Well, I had to drive one of these cars about just after Christmas, and I found the hardest thing was being able to see, because the wind was buffeting my helmet around tremendously, and I found that comfort in the cockpit was the hardest thing.
And with 10 laps to go, the race still being led by John Smith. We'll return to the action here in just a moment at Calder Park, Melbourne.
Exactly 6 laps remaining as they cross the start-finish line in the Cheviot Trophy race here at Calder Park for Australian Formula 1 and Formula 2 cars. John Smith, still the race leader. There's car 2, that's Graham Blee. He was fairly highly placed in the race earlier, before he was involved in a slight altercation with Brian Sampson. That's put him out of business. Sampson is still circulating. Smith under some pressure now. Peter Brock from Alfa Costanzo.
Yes, Alfie's been closing his gap, and well, I'd like to see him get in there and really make a motor race of this. He's obviously forcing Smith into driving defensively now. Smith will be watching those mirrors pretty anxiously.
Alfie's a real tiger, isn't he? In these last laps or so, as we watch Peter Behag just pulling his cheetah off the track, he has closed up, made up just a few car lengths. He's always been in contention, but now he really is close. Oh, weaving under brakes, coming in very late there. The reason the nose sort of waved across the road was he left his braking until absolutely the last split second. But Smith is driving a very well-judged and controlled race, isn't he? Look at that.
Half a lap between this pair and the 3rd and 4th place getters in the race, Peter McCrow and Alan Grice.
Yes, because Alan Grice has been attempting to pass McCrow now for quite some time. It'd be interesting to see if he can find a way through, and if he can he draw away?
Coming down with 4 laps to go as we see Costanzo trying to manoeuvre himself into position for another attempted passing manoeuvre on Smith as they come down into Valvoline corner.
In the last round of the Australian Formula 1 Championship, these two came together at the very first corner at Lakeside when, in making a braking manoeuvre, Alfie, the man we're looking at now, locked up the brakes and took John Smith off with him. Alfredo Costanzo recovered to finish second, but was outed under protest, and that is subject to resolution by the stewards, whether or not he gains the points for second place. It was a great and tigerish drive, though. But the two drivers concerned were good friends afterwards. They're close buddies, I think, and they understand that those things happen in motor racing. In the meantime, I don't know whether McCrow realised what's about to happen to him. That is, Alan Grice would like to lift those back wheels and just get by him in any way he could. He has closed up, and Grice really now has the sniff of the challenge in his nostrils and would like to get by. Look at him, he's so close, driving so hard.
3 laps to go for the leading cars. Yes, if Alfie doesn't get that second place back in Brisbane, it costs him the outright lead in the Australian Formula 1 Series.
Grice doesn't have the same pace as McCrow.
I think McCrow got off that last corner a little better. Gricey sort of got balked a little by McCrow. That's interesting. You can't afford to do that in these little rolls. You bounce them on a curve and, gee, you lose some time.
You can also break things, too. They're a little fragile, aren't they, I suppose?
Yes, they are a little bit. They're remarkably good.
Well, now, Alan closed up under brakes then, right on Peter McCrow's tail there, and very close. This could be a crucial corner. If he can just get out wide here and take a fast line through to get the speed on the straight he needs. Let's see, he's pressing hard. That was better, that was better.
Yes, it was. A little bit sideways, though. But he's certainly in a better position to attack.
Well, we may see an attack here. You can see he's only a couple of lengths behind. It all depends on the braking and the line that they take. But Peter McCrow not yielding a centimetre there.
They're a half lap behind John Smith and Alfie Costanzo, and they have a lap and a half to go. In fact, coming around now to get the last lap board, Smith and Costanzo, here they come down the straight, out of Glowweave corner, past the start-finish line. 1 lap to go.
Well, I don't
pulled away again, I think.
That's right. I don't think that Alfredo can do it. Try as he might. Smith, who's been one of the fastest drivers for a long time, if one of the least fortunate, seemed to have this race in the bag. He'll be praying now that nothing goes wrong. I don't know of any other single-seater driver in Australia who's had so much misfortune as John Smith. He's been a driver of immense talent. It's been obvious for years and years, but the success that he seems to have deserved has eluded him all those seasons. Maybe this will be his year. Alfie's closed up.
Coming down to the line, Smith in front. At last, desperate challenge from Costanzo, but he won't have the room to do it. Smith takes the checkered flag. Costanzo in second place in the Cheviot Trophy for Formula 1 and Formula 2 cars here at Calder Park Raceway in Melbourne. Third place, well, where's Gricey? What's he up to with Macro? How's he going? Macro's just in front. Gricey right on his tail out of Glowweave. The checkered flag is out for them. Macro, desperate, foot flat to the boards, will hold on and take third place. Grice fourth. And there's the printout on the screen. John Smith in the Royal RT4. The winner, Alf Costanzo in a Tiger second. Peter Macro taking third place ahead of Alan Grice in the final for the Cheviot Trophy here at Calder Park. And we'll return here after this break.
Welcome back to Calder. As you can see, on the outer part of the track, we've assembled virtually the entire staff, while in the garage area, we throw you now to Chris de Fraga.
Thank you, Evan. I've got John Briggs from South Australia with me. John, what happened to your black BMW?
We lost a line off the turbo intercooler and consequently lost all the horsepower. We go down from 600 horsepower down to about 100 horsepower. It becomes a normally aspirated engine.
But the engine's all right?
Engine's fine. In fact, the whole car, the BMW, is just beautiful. It's really going well. It's a matter of getting used to the car, getting me used to the car, and getting the engineers used to what it sort of needs to do. It's we've only run the car twice, and we're just getting used to it.
When's your next outing?
Surfers Paradise, 31st of August.
John Briggs, thank you very much for being with us today. Back to you, Gary.
And out on the track, we have the curious weaving going on here as cars try to warm up their tyres for the next event, which is a sports sedan event, Heat 2, the Humes Guardrail Sports Sedan Challenge. This is the final over 10 laps. Some extraordinarily painted cars. We'll see how they go when we return to the action here at Calder Park, Melbourne.
about to get run down by the Sports Sedan Challenge, Johnny Smith. But before we do, may I say congratulations for a great victory in the Cheviot Trophy final, preliminary and the final. And after the bad luck that you've had lately, 2 wins in a day, it'd be terrific news.
Yes, it is. It's really good news. It justifies the faith the sponsors have had in me, Gary, and to everybody else that's had anything to do with the car. There's a lot of people, and I just hope that they're a lot happier now too.
Okay, well, listen, on behalf of Cheviot Wheels, we'd like you to accept these trophies. Congratulations. It's really good to see you taking the checkered flag again.
Thanks very much, Gary, and thanks very much for Calder to putting on the race and to Channel 7 for all their help too.
Okay, John Smith, winner of the Cheviot Trophy. We've got a race coming up now, the Humes Guardrail Challenge for Sports Sedans.
Thank you, Gary. The cars are now just completing their warm-up lap and approaching the starting grid. In pole position, we'll find Bob Jolly with car number 6, which is the Commodore. And he'll have... We won't find him. Well, he should be there, but he won't turn up. Peter Brock is just waving his hand in a gesture which suggests that there's no hope in the world that he's going to turn up.
Kaput.
Well, 49 on the front row, if not in pole position, is there, despite the fact that he expired in an enormous cloud of smoke earlier today. Bob Tyndall in his Tirana, but he's repaired the car, whatever it was that withdrew him from an earlier race has been repaired, and Bob now is on the front row of the grid. Bob Jolly is not there. He was faster in practice yesterday by almost a second, so maybe it's just as well he's not there. On the second row, we've got Larry Cogg in the Mazda car number 90. A field distinguished by some absences as the flag drops. The race is over 10 laps. Tyndall has John Lusty in pursuit amongst others, but he will be first into the corner. 64. Second man up is Douglas. And that was a lightning start for Stuart Douglas, who started way back in 9th position on the grid and is now in 2nd spot.
Temporary. No, he's hanging on.
Well, a real mixture of cars here. The ones that didn't feature in the previous race to a great extent, although Bob Tyndall, who has been one of our top runners in sports sedans for some time, a very spectacularly painted car, had a lot of trouble in an earlier race. It looked as though he was out for the weekend. There was so much smoke beneath the car, but he and his crew have laboured on it and got it back here for the start. And he's really running away with this race. 9 laps to go. And if he goes in this fashion, he'll have lapped most of the field before the race is over. Bob Tyndall's been around for a long time, Peter Brock.
Yes, he has, and that particular car is probably a good example of a relatively low-budget car that extracts a tremendous amount of performance per dollar. Because once you start wanting to go much faster than that, you start getting towards the Tony Edmondson sort of type of car, which although it's maybe some 3 seconds a lap faster, it is certainly many times more expensive to run.
Robin Doherty is running in 2nd spot in car number 8, which is another Tirana. Then Larry Cogg is in 3rd spot. He's in car number 90, which is a Mazda. You can see the field running through here. 43 is John Lusty, one of the 2 brothers who compete in this type of racing. Where would this category be without the old Tirana?
Yes, it's been a mainstay, and there's an Ollie H there too, doing very good service after almost 20 years of motor racing.
And so the order at the moment is car number 49, which is Bob Tyndall, from car 43, which is John Lusty, both in Tiranas. Then car number 64, Stuart Douglas in an EH Holden. Car number 47, John Chambers in a Gemini. Car number 90, Larry Cogg in the Mazda, who slipped back a few places. And car number 11, rounding off the top 6, is Gary Ellis in a Tirana. Except for the one Mazda there, it looks like the back lot at GMH.
Yes, it does.
There's Larry Cogg in the Mazda, the rotary, the older model, the RX2. Well, a far cry from the RX-7 that Alan Moffat and Barry Jones, Terry Shield will be campaigning in races later this year. Some of them, of course, fronting up for the big event next Sunday at Amaroo Park, the first round of the Australian Endurance Championship, rather the Silastic 300. A very tough race, Peter Brock, over a course as tortuous and demanding as Amaroo Park.
Yes, it's a circuit which is harder on tyres than this particular circuit. It's only the same sort of lap times. I mean, with that, say, 50 53, 54 seconds, I guess, we'll see the race pace. So you're back where you started from very quickly. Hard on tyres, hard on brakes, hard on drivers. And we're going in it with our full complement next weekend because we want to give the drivers a bit of practice, the pit crew a bit of practice, and we want to find out some of the potential problems we may encounter in later races.
I was going to say the touring car changes, the regulation changes. You're not really going to get a true guide, but you've got to start somewhere, and I mean this is going to be the first indication, isn't it?
Yes, what we'll be finding out up there more than anything else is tyre performance, I think. We can't use our some of our braking and suspension bits and pieces because we're not allowed to use until the Castrol 400 at Sandown. So it's a little bit unfortunate that we couldn't just build the car for the Endurance Series. Nevertheless, the pit crew will appreciate, I think, a bit of a well-oiled drill up there.
That meeting at Amaru Park, the Scholastic 300 next Sunday, will be covered by Channel 7 live in some parts of Australia, and you'll see it in replay through other stations. So I suggest that you check your local program guides for next Sunday to check on that.
We're watching Bob Tyndall still leading with about 4.5 laps to go of these Humes Guardrail Challenge for Sports Sedans. But we're talking to Peter Brock about next weekend's, what a shame, that's Douglas, Stuart Douglas, who was coming third, pulling into the pits, and it's getting a bit crowded there. Lots and lots of cars moving in to retire from the race. But we were talking, Peter, about next weekend's race, the Scholastic 300. It will be the first outing for many of the new cars running under the revised rules as far as Australian touring cars are concerned, like the BMW.
Yes, BMW. We heard earlier that Dick Johnson won't be running because he cannot get the tyres for next weekend's race. He can get them for the weekend following's race or thereabouts. And Dick, we should see a vastly improved performance from Dick Johnson's Falcon because it's been bugged by tyre performance, the BMW by straight line performance, and it now has a new engine, a new 4-valve cylinder head to fit on the 3.5 litre engine. And also they have large brakes, a single nut holding the wheels on, which makes for pretty quick pit stops, close ratio 5-speed gearbox, etc. So the BMW all of a sudden should be right up in there, along with the Commodores, Mazdas, etc.
Bathurst this year, the James Hardy 1000 on October the 2nd, is shaping up as maybe the most open race for years, with possibly 5 different makes as potential winners.
Yes, I think we can see it shaping up that way. It's an idea that CAMs have had for probably a couple of years now, where they try and even out the performance of cars by granting concessions to some cars that they felt weren't quick enough, and not allowing similar modifications to others which they felt had adequate performance. So Bathurst this year, now that the handicappers have taken effect, really should be the closest and fastest Bathurst ever, and it's a race that I'm absolutely looking forward to with great delight.
Well, John Lusty just going out of camera range then, running second in his Tirana.
11.5 to go, too.
But still, it's Bob Tyndall who's led the race throughout. And that's Lusty going through in 43. In pursuit of Tyndall, he has made up a lot of ground to get him in sight and as close as that, but he probably doesn't have enough room to make up the ground in the older type Tirana after a slightly newer type model, both heavily disguised by aerodynamic devices. In some cases, not these two cars necessarily, of somewhat doubtful advantage, I would suggest, Peter Brock. Some people add spoilers and flares and guards to the cars because they think they make them go fast. They may add to the impression ratio, yes. 1 lap to go, but I'm not too sure about whether they make them any quicker or more stable.
That's absolutely correct, because aerodynamics is very, very much a black art. It's something that a lot of people don't know a lot about, and when you look at some of the creations that people do come out with, you look and you wonder.
Well, Bob Tyndall leading. He has half a lap to go. Flames spouting from his exhaust as he slows and changes gear, just slipping it on the inside there of Gary Ellis in a Tirana. Tyndall through. He's driven an immaculate race. Had command from the start. Has been under challenge, though, from John Lusty, but has maintained his lead and driven with a great deal of cool. That's Lusty come out behind him in the red car, but the checkered flag is out, and it's Bob Tyndall who'll get it. Tyndall first, Lusty second, and Chambers will come across the line in 3rd place. They're the top 3 in the Humes Guardrail Sports Sedan Championship here at Calder, over 10 laps. We'll be returning with the action.
Well, that winds up our coverage of the meeting here at Calder Park this afternoon. I want to say thank you very much to Chris DeFarger over in the garage area. Chris, hasn't been very exciting for you over there this afternoon, but thanks very much for your assistance.
Thank you, Gary. It's been a good afternoon, actually. Plenty of activity in the pits and hot racing, even if the weather was cold.
Well, highlights of racing, Evan Green?
Well, I think the performance of Tony Edmondson in the revised Alfa really shows that he's going to be a very hard man to beat in this category. But I was greatly impressed with Rusty French. Despite the fact that he had troubles in that second race, he shows a new style of driving. It's a new Rusty French out there in the Porsche. The man that some people said wasn't good enough to take over the Alan Jones Porsche has shown that he certainly has the capabilities. Great effort there.
Peter Brock, you did plenty of talking today, but next Sunday at Amaroo, you're going to have to get behind the wheel.
Yes, and I'm not a very good spectator, I might add. I think I'm far happier out there having a go. Looking forward to next weekend because Amaroo's a tight, twisty track that chews up tyres, and we've got new tyres for next weekend. So here's hoping for a nice competitive race up there this year.
You did say today it was hard to be sitting up there while the sports sedans, the GT cars, were going around. What's in store for you in that regard?
Well, it was impossible to get Bob Jane's Monza ready for this particular race because of Pat Purcell, the mechanic. Pat Purcell's obligation to prepare the Macedon Holmes Falcon for next weekend. So we're looking forward to running at the Australian Grand Prix meeting here later in the year.
Apart from the Scholastic 300 at Amaroo next Sunday, it'll be worth going up there to see the dice between Dick Johnson and Colin Bond in the Alfa Trophy final.
That's true enough. That was exciting racing today. I was rather impressed with all that. I thought that the young fella you gave the prize to for
Tony Longhurst.
Tony Longhurst, yes. He to me was a highlight of the day. I thought there's a good young lad who knows what he's doing. And I suppose Smithy's drive there, he was very controlled, and that was a good effort from Alfie there. Alfie never had car troubles. He was pushing all the way. So, you know, great to see a new talent there, and great to see things happening for an old talent there in Smithy.
Peter Brock, thanks very much for your assistance today. We look forward to seeing you at Amaroo Park next Sunday. Evan Green, I think certainly, apart from the highlights that you mentioned, the performance of John Smith was very gratifying for all his fans.
Oh, he's been one of our top drivers for a long time, but the least lucky, so it was good to see him win 2 races today. Maybe it suggests that from now on we can expect to see John Smith having not just great talent, but good fortune.
We must thank Clark Cranes too, by the way, who helped us with our elevated camera position here at Calder today to bring you a very exciting racing. To Chris DeFarger, thank you very much. Also to Peter Brock, to Evan Green, and as I said, some of you live, some of you in replay, the Scholastic 300 at Amaroo Park next week on the 7 Network.
Fantastic Journeys coming up next, followed at 6 by 7 National News, when you can switch on the world. Charlton Heston, Stephen Boyd and Jack Hawkins star in the most spectacular motion picture ever made, the mighty epic Ben-Hur, magnificent winner of 11 Academy Awards. Ben-Hur comes to Channel 7 tomorrow night at the special time of 7:30, right after Sons and Daughters. For the blockbuster movies, just watch us now.